Good evening. Before tonight's public planning commission meeting, we have two public hearings. So I'll open the first one. Notice is hereby given that a joint public hearing will be held by the Town of Delafield Plan Commission and a staff representative of the Waukesha County Department of Parks and Land Use Planning and Zoning Development on Tuesday, August 2nd at 6:30 p.m. at the Delafield Town Hall located at W302 and 1244 Maple Avenue, Delafield, Wisconsin, to consider the conditional use request CU 74 of Scott and Jinga Benz Joint Revocable Trust as owner for land altering activities associated with the construction of a single-family residence. Tim, do you want to, or Ben,
All right, well, good evening, everybody. Just quickly.
to be up at the mic?
Oh, you got it. Sounds a little different here. All right, start this over. Good evening, everybody. Just to introduce myself, I'm Ben Greenberg. I'm a senior planner with the Waukesha County Planning and Zoning Division, representing the county for this joint public hearing. I'm just going to give a quick site report and quick analysis of the request. And certainly available for any questions from the commission. The subject parcel is about a half acre in size. It's located on Beach Park Circle, so we're talking the southern shores of Pewaukee Lake. It's about 100 feet of frontage on the lake, and the lots are about 220 feet deep. With respect to site topography, there's only about an 8-foot change in grade from road grade to the lake, so 8 feet over 220 feet. We're dealing with fairly flat site conditions. There's about a 3 to 4% averaged slope across that lot. Soil tests, otherwise known, it's a sewer lot, however, soil tests were conducted to determine the elevation of seasonal high groundwater. That test is also referred to as a Form A or Form A groundwater determination report, and that report revealed that seasonal high groundwater sits around 3 feet from the surface based on existing site conditions. And so that's a limiting factor for the depth of how deep a basement can be constructed. The county stormwater ordinance requires a 1-foot separation between that seasonal groundwater and the lowest floor of that basement. The subject lot currently contains a 2-story single-family residence with attached garage but no basement. Again, I noted the gentle topography on the lot. That's very similar with the riparian lots on either side and up and down that portion of the shore. And the lots within that first ring road on the other, the non-riparian lots are fairly flat as well. Based on staff site visit, it did not appear that any of the riparian lots nearby had a full basement exposure. Some had no basement exposure, typically the older homes on that stretch, and some were able to establish a partial exposure with their basement. There is, as I noted, the neighborhood's pretty flat, and there didn't appear to be any clear road ditches to convey water along the road. The petitioner is proposing to tear down all the existing improvements and build a new 2-story single-family residence with an attached garage. There will be a basement with this new home that is being proposed. I'll do my best to explain this. You have copies of the plans, but the basement will not have a full exposure in that the basement floor will sit below yard grades. However, you will be able to walk out of the basement via some sliding doors as well as a garage door on the other corner of the home into an area that will be contained with retaining walls, and then step up, or in one area take a ramp up from that basement elevation to get yourself back up to yard grade. So it's a walkout basement, but not really a full exposure. I would call it a partial exposure with the ability to walk out from the basement elevation.
It's within the 1-foot requirement for the high groundwater.
He complies with the current revision, and I'll explain that a little bit, but a fair question. Excuse me. They are also planning to excavate underneath the garage, and that can often be the most difficult area to meet that groundwater separation, because that water table around this lake does rise with elevation, and so oftentimes when somebody's trying to get some type of basement exposure, it's that roadside of that basement where you may see the most interception with groundwater, and when you excavate underneath the garage, which is typically the point closest to the road, that can often be it can often be difficult to meet that groundwater separation. They are proposing 4 feet of fill on the roadside, which is one of the key triggers to why county required the conditional use. In some situations, 4 feet of fill is allowable based on site conditions. I think the concern out here was everything is very flat. It's an older pattern of development. The lots basically and consistently slope from road to lake, with garages sitting a little bit lower than road grade, and this proposal is to build up some grades to create positive drainage away from the garage back towards the road, whereas currently it kind of still very gently slopes towards the existing garage and home. Side yard swales are proposed in the plan to convey drainage along lot lines, and the plan also calls for tying in downspouts into drain tile and outletting that on the lake side of the property. The initial plan that was submitted did propose a lower basement floor elevation than the current plan. That plan was reviewed by the County Land Resources Division for compliance with those basement wetness standards, which establish that 1 foot separation, and that original plan did not comply with those requirements. The petitioner, who's also the owner of the property, I should note, made some adjustments, raising the basement floor and reducing the foundation wall height underneath the garage, which requires now that you step up a little bit from the garage to the basement. But the result was that the revised plan does comply with those basement wetness standards, and based on his willingness to compromise and reduce some wall heights and do a little stepping up from garage into home, he did not need to, propose any additional fill. So he was able to basically keep the grading as originally proposed, while making modifications to the home itself to comply with those basement wetness standards. Last thing I'll note is that the town engineer, Tim, myself, and a member from the Land Resources Division did meet Scott out on site in early July, late June, to just address some concerns, provide comments. I think basically they were along the lines of, please provide better side yard swales to convey drainage, make them deeper and wider. And the plan that you guys have, this, I believe it's the July 11th revision, does reflect, Tim has seen this plan, county has seen this plan, and we believe that the petitioner has provided the modifications to that plan that we have collectively asked for. County ordinance requires at any time owner obtain a conditional use for land altering activity, that they obtain a county stormwater permit that would cover erosion control on smaller projects and broader stormwater management for larger scale projects. Scott has applied for that permit and is working with Land Resources. I'm not sure if it's been issued, but it's, I'm guessing, close to being issued if it hasn't already been issued. Again, county ordinance is requiring this conditional use, and our ordinance asks for the town's participation through a formal recommendation from the Plan Commission, and we ask for that as well as any recommended conditions that you would want tied to that approval. Our ordinance requires that we substantially incorporate any of those conditions of approval into any permit that the County Park and Plan Commission would authorize. I'm happy to take any questions, but that's all I've prepared.
One question, you said that the elevation of the building was going to be higher and would actually slope towards the road. So some water would run from the house
Right.
towards the road, which is contrary to the current site.
Yep,
Where does the water go once it gets to the road?
sure. And Tim, please step in, because I'm not an engineer. But again, you're referring to this area, so I would say it's a very gentle drain currently, the buildup of the grades. It will act as a bit of a diversion, but we believe with these swales that capture that drainage, both in this direction as well as anything that would have traveled onto the road here and is now getting it's diverging based on this fill, that it would be captured in the swale here and the pretty significant swale here. I think there was most significant concern about this property. I think I failed to note that this lot sits a little bit higher, or the house does. This house sits a little bit lower, and so typically, we like orderly patterns of development. However, these are older homes in this area, not to a home, but generally, and I think, and Tim may I think has provided me with that comment that a newer pattern of development, this may be the first, I'm not sure how many in this road, but where we're going to see folks wanting to get a little bit of positive drainage around from the garage. And so we think this will fit that future pattern of development, even though it's a little divergent from what's currently out there. And that was really the concern and why we thought holding a hearing and requiring the conditional use was important and required.
So while the water will flow from the structure toward the road, it will not reach the road because it will go off to each side. So no water is going to hit the road.
I'm not sure, I mean, Tim, do you want to?
Yeah, there's gonna be, I mean, from the garage, it does come towards the road.
Not now, but in the plans.
Yeah, you know, it's pretty
But he said
flat.
the
Some
road
of the
is
water
higher
just,
than the
some of the
road.
water does sit there, so you can have some water, but the intent is to get the water to the sides as best as possible on the driveway.
So is the driveway going to be crowned to ensure that the sheet flow goes to the east or
Doesn't
the
sh-
west,
It
or?
doesn't show quite a crown in the middle of it, but it does show like on the sides of the driveway that it would run off of the sides of that. We can make that a condition of the approval, but driveways are, it's hard to crown a driveway when you're going into a garage
Right.
on that, but if it could be slightly, you know, crowned, that might help a little bit better than what's anticipated now.
Well, can't you put some kind of collection drain between the driveway and the road, that the water flows?
We have-
Instead of hitting your driveway, it hits the, I've seen them before, they're just
Yeah.
little, then they go down there and then they go off to this.
Into the swales?
We're gonna have problems.
We don't really have a ditch out there. The problem is there's no ditch out
You
there.
don't need a ditch if you have swells on each side and you have a drain.
But you gotta get it to those sides, you know. So that's what the intent there is, to get most of that water to go in both directions from that driveway.
And you and I and both know that if any water hits the road and drains onto somebody else's property, we're gonna have
Right.
a big problem. So the way to avoid that problem now is to come up with a system that no water actually hits the road, because it has not hit the road historically. And that's the classic definition of diverting water. Something that has not happened historically changes and happens now because of the design of the structure. And you can always put a drain at the end of the driveway and run a pipe on an angle to get it, just to go to the swells. I think it's great that you're putting the swells in and being real responsible for the water, but we can't. Water's a big problem in this town. I get called a lot of names because of water. Okay?
Thanks, Ben.
Sure, thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak at this public hearing? Sure, come up, hand in your card, or you're good?
Good evening. My name is Glenn Molesco. It's my wife Laverne. We have the property adjacent to Scott and Jigna's, facing the lake on the right side. And I have two concerns. One, I think we've handled when we looked through the diagram, and that was that the property does not extend beyond a tangent of a line between our property and the property on the other side of Scott and Jigna's. We had that issue with Cully White on the other side, and we had a lawsuit. We had the police many times, and we got it resolved. We also had an issue with them pumping water with the sump pump onto our property and creating a ravine in the middle of our property. And, you know, again, they took care of that. They took the sump pump and had it go down. The other issue, obviously, is what I'm talking about right now, is the water that would come onto our property. It's significantly lower than their property. And I'm talking about not more than, 4 or 5 feet lower. We've had to, did some reconfiguration of the water and the flooding that we would get there. Spent about $60,000 to put piping in and everything else, and a patio on the front of our property on the lakeside so that the water would drain off. So we just don't want to have the issue with either a sump pump or drainage from these swells that come over to our property. We had to build up the property with Central Services, landscaper, so that it's pretty close to where Scott's property is. maybe a foot lower, but that's only for a couple feet. Then it drops down 4 feet. And my concern is that if there's any kind of leakage or any kind of sump pump that goes the wrong direction, I just want to be on the record, say that we don't want to have the issue in our property and get into a lawsuit and all the other kind of things that we had to go through before. That's basically it. If you can handle that, you know, Scott's a good guy. We want to cooperate and have a good neighbor, but I just don't want to have the issues again that we had before. Thank you.
Thank you.
Include the street water too.
Oh, my wife wants to say something? Go ahead.
Is that all right?
Sure.
Yeah, because I've been,
Not the first time.
Won't be the last.
yeah, Laverne Malesko. And, you know, that was my first question after you described what was happening was what's going to happen with that street water? And at the point where it goes to the street, our properties are level. Where, you know, where it's different as it comes back to the lake, then we go down. So that street water, I don't know how much of a swale you would have. I don't know how that's going to work to keep it in their yard, because there are no ditches. So it either goes straight out or. What's that? Yeah. So that's just it. That'd be my big concern too, would be this coming out to the street. If that swale would be able to handle that and keep it.
So you're saying the lots are level at the road,
Yes.
and by the time you get to the lake, there's a 3 or 4 foot variance?
Even before that, halfway back,
There's a big significant dip of
it's, you know,
3 to 4 feet.
Like
3 to
this.
4, but it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
There are a couple of small landscape walls,
Yeah.
retaining walls that hold back the vents, grades, and then the house sits.
Yeah, we did some landscaping to try to build it up to keep it fairly close to level. with-
Right, to try to get it so it didn't, it was just draining right into the house because we don't have a basement, we're on a slab. And then that water builds up, it just goes right into the floor level, so.
The issue with the basements, I mean, a lot on our other side have issues every time there's rain, they put a 3-foot basement in.
Yeah.
I know Rooney's had problems with theirs, and if somebody bought that, they're putting it, I would just be real careful with any kind of basements, because the water somehow just seeps up. I mean, I looked at the soil sample and everything else, and it says, you know, 3, 4 feet, you're fine. I'm not a builder or an architect, and I don't understand all of that, but I know people have had issues with basements on the lake when you're that close to the water.
Right in that area.
And everybody remembers the flood we had about 10 years ago, which was, everybody was devastated with that.
Yeah, after that is when we did our landscaping to try to get it back in there. All right, thank you.
Thanks. Does anyone else wish to speak at the public hearing? Okay, we'll close the first public hearing. Second, and we will be discussing this as part of the planning commission meeting in about 15 or 20 minutes.
You don't need us anymore.
No.
Thank you.
Well, I have one question.
to stick around?
Yes.
Typically, I'll leave
I think so, I think so.
One.
I have one question I was gonna ask it in our discussion, but would a retaining wall running partial length of the property, act as a dam to prevent the water flowing over to your side of the property? If the subject property had a retaining wall on your side and it ran 3/4 of the length of the property, is that even feasible?
That's possible. We have a fence now because the property's higher, so we put a fence up so people aren't, you know, looking into our kitchen when we're having.
Sure.
It was there for quite some time.
Yeah, oh, well, yeah, the fence was there, and then we replaced it 25 years ago when we bought the property.
Right.
We put another one in, and then we had to build the ground up next to it for about 3 or 4 feet before it drops down to, you know,
Yeah.
to the normal level where our house is, the floor of our house.
Yeah.
When you say 3/4 of the property, where you
But
think?
I'm very familiar with Beach Park Circle,
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
not familiar with, where's your house in terms of Coleman?
We're down.
Coleman's way down on the other side of where.
Oh, so you're over by
Yeah,
Harkin.
So we're maybe 5 houses over, you know, the new
Yeah,
one.
Reamers and
that
then
Cully
Cully
Whitefield.
White,
Sure.
and then.
We're right
North
next to that one.
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you, that was my, if it was even possible.
I don't know if a retainer wall might.
I don't
work
either.
for
That's
that.
the
I don't know if
county's
we build
job.
it on our side or on their side.
Okay, we'll call the second meeting. Notice is hereby given at a public hearing will be held by the Town of Delafield Town Board and Planning Commission on Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022, starting immediately following a public hearing scheduled to start at 6:30 at the Delafield Town Hall. The purpose of the hearing is to consider a request by Cassandra Castro and Thomas Beaudry, DBA Cassandra Motorsports LLC, N47W28229 Lindale Road, for an amendment to their legal non-conforming conditional use permit to allow for a 7,076 square foot expansion of the sales and showroom building on land located in 47W28229 Lindale Road. The property is also known as tax key number DELT 0721999. Go ahead.
Just give a brief.
Brief overview, and then we'll see
Yes,
if-
yeah, so first of all, this particular site, Cassandra's, has a conditional use on it. It's a legal non-conforming conditional use permit, and that's only because the M1 district has some regulations regarding outside display of vehicles or just outside storage, and so it was issued, I believe in the 70s was the conditional use, the original one, for a car dealership at that time, and this has been perpetuated over the years. So that conditional use states in it that any change in the site or any addition to the building, any changes would have to come back for a conditional use. In this case, we have the addition that's associated with it, as well as they are changing the lot boundary. We have the certified survey map that's going to split this larger lot. Currently, it sits on the 19-acre site. Assuming there's consideration for the certified survey map, if that goes through, this lot would become, I believe it's like 7.3 or 7.4 acres. And so we're doing two things, allowing the expansion of the business showroom, as well as the lot size change for the conditional use. And that's the only items that are really a part of the amendment. Every other conditions that we approved on Cassandra's would still be in place.
Does anyone wish to speak at this public hearing? Okay. All right, we'll close this public hearing. We'll call the Planning Commission meeting to order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the minutes from July 12th, 2022.
Make a
Any-
motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item 3, communications for discussion on possible action. We did have a resignation from Casey Dietrich. To those who did not know, he submitted his resignation, so we are a board of 5 for the time being. Unfinished business, we have none. Item 5A, Scott and Jinga Bentz, N23W28296 Beach Park Circle, with consideration and recommendation of Waukesha County on the approval of land altering activities at N23W28296 Beach Park Road associated with the construction of a new single-family house. First public hearing tonight. So how do we keep the water on the property?
I think it's a major issue.
It's a big issue.
Yeah, not only the sides, but I'm very concerned about the driveway. Because if it's gonna flow if it's gonna flow and hit the road, wherever it goes, it hasn't gone historically. And people are gonna get upset. It may go 4 doors down, but people are gonna get upset. Then we know what happens then. And I'm sure there must be ways to engineer, to design. Yeah. Well, it's up to you.
Yeah,
Can I just make a comment in regards, you can come up, in regards to the adjacent property, the folks that are here, their driveway actually right now actually goes from the road down their, the water actually drains from the road down their driveway currently,
right.
okay?
The
So-
ones who
so-
are here,
Pardon?
the ones who are here.
Yes, yes. And so the intent here is to put in a swale that actually comes out closer to the road to pick up some of that road water that is
Going down there.
going down their driveway, pick that up, try to get it going down the swale between the two. Now, we talked about the depth of the swale, and Mr. Benz has cooperated, and they've got at least a 1-foot depth of swale, at least 1 foot from, it starts out shallow, but then as it gets further closer to the garage and the house on the other side, it does get to be a foot deep. And it's a narrow spot, so it'll be probably a very, very defined channel where the water can flow into.
Okay. And if the water on the road went past that house and just by nature just flowed down toward the lake, it could go onto these people's driveway and,
Yeah, I mean, naturally, if we have a heavy storm, it's gonna not only go on Mr. Benz's property, but it would go on their driveway as well. We don't have a ditch at this time to handle that. I would say that maybe if there's a way to make more of the driveway sheet flow to the sides as opposed to towards the road, that will minimize that additional water to the road, I would say.
I would agree with that. I really want to have no water on the road. I just think that's asking for trouble.
I know we're out of hearing, so I don't want to be out of order, but if I could.
Sure.
It's probably worth noting too that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the existing driveway sits right at the property line. Is that roughly at the property line?
Correct. The existing, yeah.
Right, and so where you're creating a conveyance now, you have a hard asphalt driveway that is sheet flowing right towards the neighbors that everybody's concerned about. So, you know, as we looked at this as, is he improving the site conditions? I do think that that is an area of improvement, because where we have asphalt pitched towards lake and neighbor, depending on what part of that flat driveway, and a neighbor sitting lower than that driveway, will now have a conveyance where that water would, in a good 1 foot deep conveyance, where that water will in large part hit that area and then, I think effectively move along that lot line past the residence, which is always the biggest concern, when we're looking at these drainage plans.
Hi there, Scott Benz, property owner. Just to piggyback what Ben said, so currently, if I can walk over to the screen, the current driveway is 20 feet wide from this point over to here, and it runs back to about here. And it sheet flows directly at Glenn's house. 20 feet wide, and it sheet flows 100% at his property. I think that's important to note, because that is all gonna be removed and become non-impervious surface. So it's gonna be grass swale, and it's gonna cut off 100% of that water that's currently sheet flowing directly towards this fence. And it's gonna stop it. That's really important, because that's gonna improve his condition right there. Secondly, we took care of the roof water. So we took care of roof water here, here, and here, and buried the downspouts. They were represented by these lines, and we got them routed out past Glenn's house as a second level of insurance. I think Ben touched on that a little bit. And then, obviously, the sump pump as well. With the county ordinance, there's 2 crocks required. And we have those both routed out beyond both residents, one's on each side of the house. So those 2 things are important. Lastly, about the road water, currently the inner circle, Mr. Chairman, you said that you were familiar with the inner circle. So the inner circle, all the houses on this side of the street sheet flow across the road, including their driveways, and onto our properties. All of them do. They're higher, and there's no ditch to cut off that water. And what I worked with Tim on was defining those swales on both the east and west property line to grab that water as best we can and to give it a more defined swale to get it to the lake where it wants to go. And I think we achieved that very well. The driveway is designed so the edges are dipped down ever so slightly, a few inches, so it will, in effect, have a crown on it. Very hard to visualize it, but it's going to be tipped off to the side, probably capturing 70% of the water on a normal rain. But any water that does sheet flow down to the street, it's got over 20 feet here of my property to recapture in there before it would go to Glenn's. And this driveway that's opposite Glenn's driveway over here is directly opposite. And if you drove over there today and looked at it, it clearly sheet flows right down at his garage. And what Glenn did and what he explained to you folks was when he had the restoration done of his property, he actually has a trench drain in front of his garage that is conveyed out to the lake because he was getting all the water from the neighbor across the street. So I think this plan in front of you tonight will improve his situation, will reduce the water that he's getting currently by X factor. I can't tell you how much, but everything's an improvement to where he's at, what he's at right now. And with the sloping of the driveway, tipping the edges down ever so slightly, we're going to be able to capture the majority of the water on each side of our swale. Well, it's still driveway. Yeah, so that's what I have to offer. Be happy to answer any questions on that.
Is the trench drain that the neighbor put in just one of those grates right in front of his garage door where the water goes in and then gets into the lake?
Actually, he doesn't have a trench drain. He has his driveway pitched to this corner, and then he has a kind of a yard drain or grass drain there.
Because that's what I think, Ron, you were thinking maybe could you put something like that at the end of your driveway as it abutted the road?
I definitely could, but
That is, if it hit that drain, it would then get through a pipe directly into your swales.
That's what I have in my house.
yeah, I could, but I don't think I would want to or need to. I mean, there's another newer house on the kind of the northwest end of Beach Park, and they're 4 feet above the road, and their slopes down to the road, and they don't have a drain.
Well, it's nice to know, but it's not necessarily relevant.
But I think a key piece of information, though, is during the public hearing, I wasn't aware that the current driveway and the current conditions are, the driveway is right on the property line. You know, I mean,
an improvement over
this
that.
is a huge improvement. They're moving, 20 feet to the opposite side, and removing all that impervious surface, so.
I mean, I don't want to cause problems for either of my neighbors, and I'm not in the business of creating problems. Obviously, it's better to pre-plan and do it in advance. I've been in the construction business for about 30 years. I don't feel that would be, it's a great idea, don't get me wrong. We've done trench drains and lower level parking when you drive down a ramp, but I don't think it's warranted here. I think the swale will do its job to the right, and especially if we tip that concrete down that 2 to 3 inches, that'll capture a good amount of that water without the expense or the burden of that trench drain.
I have a question that may be totally irrelevant, but what if you flipped the house? And again, I'm not a builder or an architect, but if you just flipped the house, you'd have the garage on the other property owner, and then you'd give 60 feet for the water to be absorbed before you got anywhere near it. Now, I don't know if that's a burden on you or your wife or who you're building the house for, but if you just flip the whole house, then the garage would be on the other side, and this whole discussion would be significantly less severe.
Right. What, anything's possible, but in this case, it's not desirable. I think the important thing to note is that we are not changing the grade at the property line. The existing grade along Glenn's entire property line is not being affected. We're matching existing. And in fact, we're lowering it with the addition of a swale.
Oh, I agree with everything except the road. The fact that you're putting in 4 feet of fill, and I understand why you're doing it. You don't want water flowing into your garage. So, but it's going, even
yeah.
if 20% or 10% of the water hit the road, it's gonna go somewhere that it's never gone before. And
Well, right now, I'm taking out all the water from my neighbor, and no one had a problem with that.
But you were taking water from your neighbor for the last 40 years, and you were taking water from your neighbor when you bought the lot. So they
Yeah.
didn't divert the water. It's been like that.
We directed it, right? It was designed. I mean, I don't want to argue with you, but, I mean, it's a bad design.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of bad.
Right. So, we are not interested in flipping the home, to answer your question directly.
Okay.
It was planned out this way. And again, we're matching grades at existing property line, and less water is going there today less water is going there tomorrow than is going there today, substantially less.
So Tim, with the depth of the swale, which you said is a foot, which seems fairly meaningful for a typical swale, And I think this goes to your question, putting a retaining wall. I mean, once water's in the swale, it's not gonna go onto the neighbor's property. I mean, short of a massive flood day.
You know, if we get the 100-year gully washer, I'm not, you know,
Can't
a
predict.
lot of things can happen. So, you know, the intent for that swale is to make sure that it captures most of the rainstorms and gets the water moving in that direction. I've seen a lot less swales that are a lot, not as deep as 1 foot.
Right.
But I was pretty adamant, as Scott knows. I mean, we went through several iterations of this where I wanted to see it on the plan to say, those contours show 1 foot. So if we have a problem, I can go out there and
Measure it.
point to it and say, that's what it has to be, and we can shoot those elevations
But what he's doing on the side is improving it, because
on the sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have
Yeah,
another idea or suggestion that I could offer up in lieu of the trench drain. Since we are doing some stormwater piping at here and here and here to convey that water, we could put a box drain up in this corner and create a little depression, like a yard drain, because I'm gonna have piping to here. We can simply extend it uphill a little further to help capture any of that runoff before it would leak possibly over here. Glenn's driveway is probably another 10 feet, 8 to 10 feet from the property line to his start of his driveway. He has 8 to 10 feet of planter and grass here. So if this water comes out and comes around, it's gonna immediately start to fall back into the property. So we could even put a drain here to help expedite that flow out.
now in my house, I have an engineered driveway. That's what I'm not a builder, so that's what the builder told me. It's engineered, and they shot it as they poured it in sections. And the water rolls, because I was very concerned about it, it rolls all the way down my driveway over to one corner where there's maybe a 12-inch round thing. And it goes in the ground, and it goes right out to the lake.
Right.
And there's no standing water on my driveway at all. I don't know if that's possible. No, I have a much longer driveway. I don't know if that's possible to do an engineered driveway and shape the driveway so the water actually
Yeah.
flows to the drain.
If the driveway is sloped already towards the swale, and he puts that new circle drain right at the end of the driveway, it's almost, it's about a foot from where yours is on your house, so it's conceptually pretty close. I think it'd be an improvement, and it sounds like that's a more reasonable ask than putting in a full trench.
I would rather do that than have a trench drain at the base of the property line.
Okay.
I think you would get the net effect would be very similar. And again, I think we're just buying an insurance policy out for that 3-inch storm that happens in a flash flood event. Because I think in any normal rain, including a flash flood in your driveway, I guarantee that thing's got to overflow.
It does, but it doesn't go down any neighbor's property. It doesn't, not a drop flows on. Believe me, my neighbors aren't that nice. They would not let a drop fall on their property.
Tim, what are your thoughts on extending that storm pipe up there and putting an extra yard inlet in there?
It would help if it could be depressed, that area, then that ground is depressed and you can get it going, and extend that pipe down.
Yeah, I think that's a
That
good
would help the
suggestion.
water.
Like it.
I think that crowning the driveway a little bit more than what's shown here on the plan would be a little bit better too. just
Right.
To get it more on the side, because it definitely shows it's coming out from the garage door towards the road. So I think
Well,
to
and-
address Ron's concern is to crown that to get the water to be going to the side.
And actually crowning it is, the plan doesn't show it as crowned as we wanted it because after talking about it and the swales, it helps me to crown the driveway because it gets the edges lower.
Yeah.
So it actually, we were planning on doing that even though it's not reflected.
To what, like a 2-degree crown, 3-degree crown? And again, I don't know what I'm talking, I don't know if that's.
It's
how
not
you-
gonna take
So
much.
right now, it's a sheet flow like this. It sheet flows from here to there,
Yeah.
A to B. So it would still sheet flow from A to B. It's still, we can't stop that. But what we can do is, we can tip these edges down. So probably come out here and then it tips down maybe 3 inches or so, 4 inches. And this side starts to fall off. So indirectly, you have a very gradual crown. And that's gonna pick up most of the water is what Tim and I are talking about, if I'm not mistaken, right?
It puts the water on his property versus
And
You're
once it's on
concerned
his
about the
property, it's
road.
gonna get into the swale.
Eventually it will. These lands are not real steep.
Yeah,
It's not like some of the ones along the lake like Lakeside where it's steep. These are very
They're
flat.
flat.
Very flat out there,
That's why the groundwater's 3 feet.
yeah.
It's Iowa. Or Illinois.
So you open those two conditions on it.
Yes,
We're just trying to work together to
yeah,
I think they
avoid
just,
future problems.
if you do make a motion to that effect, then I would just say that the plan should be revised to reflect whatever we,
the
Whatever
crown
we
and the
agreed
new
to.
outlet.
yeah, just so we have an updated plan showing that.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
so we don't have any
We want an
question
updated plan.
a year from now.
Well, so Ben and his staff is clear too, so when they,
Tim, what do you think would you say, 3 inches from center to edge? If we,
Yeah, how wide is that driveway? You know? I can't. Like 22 feet? That's gonna be more than plenty.
at the house, it's 31 feet, there it is, but then it narrows down about 10 feet, so,
So if you want, yeah, 3 inches would be 2% on each side.
Yep.
So that's what we use for roads,
yeah.
so.
I think if we drop the edges about 3 inches on each side.
It's about 2%, yeah, that's,
Yeah.
normal road is 2%, and so that's what the driveway would be, and it's, visually, people won't know that, but engineers that deal with 2% all the time can tell. So,
Someone want to make a motion?
That's Ed's job.
I would like to make a recommendation to approve the site grading plan by Land Tech Surveying, with requesting that it be updated to show 2% grade on the driveway, tipping those edges, and then also showing an extension of the piping to show a lawn drain in that'd be the southeast corner of the property,
Near the road,
near the road, yes.
in a minimum of 2 inches, yes. I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item 5B, Tom Beaudry, 229 Lindale Road LLC, reconsideration, possible action on the following located at N47W28229 Lindale Road.
Thanks, man.
Certified survey map to split the land into 2 parcels.
all right, I mentioned this before. The current property is 19.8 acres, or 19.9 acres. The request is to split this land into 2 parcels. Lot 1, which would be where Cassandra's is, would be 7.4 acres. The other lot would be 11.3 acres. And then there's an outlot that's to the south of Lot 1, or Lot 2, and to the southeast of Lot 1. And that would be set aside for stormwater management for both sites on that. Each, Lot 1 would get, obviously already has access off of County Highway JK. Lot 2 would get access off the shared driveway. And they had contacted Waukesha County regarding, that access, allowing 2 properties to access that location, and they said that that was acceptable without any improvements to Highway JK on that. We do require a shared driveway agreement, which they've submitted. I have not, it's usually a staff review for that, and so we have not provided that at this time. As far as this certified survey map goes, all the technical items have been addressed. There's one item that needs revision, And that is on Lot 2, the surveyor has shown the Waukesha County shoreline jurisdiction, shoreline and floodland jurisdiction limits, which kind of cuts through the middle of Lot 2. And actually, and I confirmed with Ben tonight that the area that's in the far southeast corner that's noted as, I don't think it's, you can't tell, but it's that lower area with the cross hatches on there, on the plan. That's a area that's zoned HG, which means high groundwater, and that would be the limits of their jurisdiction on that. So we don't want that other line to be on there showing the Waukesha County shoreline jurisdiction. That is not the correct line on that. So that would be the only technical correction that I have. This was submitted to the county, and I have not received any comments back from them at this time. So any recommendation would be subject to their technical comments.
So is all of the hatched, either the high groundwater or the floodplain, is that all in Lot 2, or is it part of Lot 1?
That's all in Lot 2.
Okay.
And there, yeah, that's wetland and high groundwater and, yep.
You know, in your first presentation during the open, or during the public hearing, I may have misunderstood you, but I thought you said all we're doing for Lot 2 is approving the CSM, dividing the lot. But for Lot 1, we're approving a CSM plus the expansion?
Yeah, that's item 5B2. It's the next
The-
item on the agenda.
No,
We're doing the CSM first, then we're going to expand the showroom.
okay, but they're two different.
And I just want to be clear that part of the conditional use permit, when we get to that item for Cassandra's, deals with two items. One is they're changing the lot size.
So
we
updating
have
the
to,
legal description and then updating
Yeah.
the,
basically the legal description, but
So 5B1 and 5B2 are both part of the conditional use amendment.
in essence, yes. I mean, they go hand in hand. A lot of that's why they're kind of all under 5B, is they all kind of go hand in hand. They intertwine amongst each other. So, the land split can take place without anything else being approved. I mean, they are proposing two pieces of land there, and they could
So
have
number
that.
1 can take place, 5B1 can take place.
5B1 can take
Regardless
place
of what
and
happens on 5B2.
correct,
Okay,
or 5B4.
yeah. And the owners right now are the same? The
That's
same-
correct. It's a LLC, 229 Lindell Road LLC. It's Tom Beaudry, who's here tonight.
And if the ownership, are we gonna get to approve the shared driveway agreement,
That would go to the town board,
the town board?
We are not a party to it, but when the CSM goes to the board, then, in the past, they've just acknowledged it, that it's in place.
Yeah.
It should be recorded with the CSM, though.
Yes, okay, that was my point. Okay. Just clarifying. Okay. Thank you.
The other thing I should mention is, I mentioned in my report, but I'll just reiterate, is both lots are will be served by holding tanks there.
Any further discussion?
What about the septic tank that's currently on Lot 1?
That's going to remain.
It's going to be exclusively on Lot 1 to exclusively service Lot 1?
That's correct. Mhm.
do we have a date of the CSM that we have in front of us?
I don't have a date on it. Usually they put the date when they stamp it, but I don't have a date on it.
I'll make a motion to approve the CSM as presented to us. Recommendation to the town board to approve the CSM as presented, contingent on all technical corrections by Engineer Barbeau in Waukesha County and other jurisdictions that may have party to the CSM.
I'll second.
Do we need to include the movement of the line?
That was part of Engineer
That's-
Barbeau's technical correction.
Okay, all right, that's okay, good. Okay, any further discussion?
Maybe the only other one would be, it'd be subject to the agreement, the shared driveway agreement executed prior to the CSM being executed by the town.
I will amend my motion to include that the shared driveway agreement needs to be executed at the time that CSM is recorded.
Any further discussion?
Does the second agree to that?
I do.
Thank you, Dan. Robert's rules and all. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item 5B2 and I guess 5B3 are kind of together, they're sort of related, but item 5B2, conditional use amendment for construction of an addition to the showroom at Cassandra's Motorsports and to update the property description, and then 5B3 in the same genre is site grading, landscape lighting, and architectural and plan of operation for the expansion of the showroom.
All right. As discussed, this is, the addition is 7,976 square feet. The,
How big is the current showroom?
pardon?
How big is the current showroom?
I'd have to ask, I don't know.
My guess would be somewhere around 25.
So we're quadrupling the size?
2,500?
For the showroom area.
Oh,
You know, you got offices behind it, and parts room, and then you got shop.
In the-
It's much longer, it's probably more than 20-some thousand total.
Hey, Tom, why don't you come on up here if we're gonna ask your questions, so. Just, we have this recorded and on YouTube, so people will wanna know what you're talking about.
Thomas Spodry, the owner of Cassandra's.
So I shouldn't have asked the showroom size, what's the building size?
I'm only assuming it's over 20,000.
Okay, so it's not doubling the size of the.
No, it's probably closer to 30,000.
Okay. Sorry, Tim, go
The
ahead.
purpose behind the showroom is, these type of cars are not
Not good-
natured
not good outside.
to winter. So actually, we'll be improving the site by, we'll be putting more cars inside for the winter. So it'll have a better appeal to it.
Sorry, Tim, go ahead. Turning it back over to you.
Okay, so just, I mean, the use issue, which is part of the conditional use, obviously, is really just as a showroom. You know, so the use of the entire site is really not changing. Hours of operation are not changing. There's really, as far as the actual operation there, nothing really changes. The only thing is the addition as well as the change in the size of the lot. But I'm just gonna go ahead and just talk through the plan of operation and the site plan then, if that's okay. Do you want to? It's all together, so we're gonna do that, if you don't mind. And so, one of the things that is noted that is, there are 30 stalls that are marked on their site plan. We don't really have a code that identifies what the parking has to be on there, so this is a little bit more of what the planning commission feels is necessary. And our parking really deals with parking for employees and patrons of the site, not necessarily the number of vehicles that can be parked out there as an auto sales location. So we have the flexibility to determine if 30 stalls is adequate for the site, and we might want to get information from Tom, maybe not yet, but soon, in regards to that. In regards to the actual building, it's going to be a two-color insulated metal panels with a metal roof. The colors were shown on your architectural plans, the gray and the white, the Dover white. Let's see. Site grading is minimal. They're going to basically, the first first floor of the building, the existing building will get extended west. It does drop off to the west a little bit, so there's some grading that would be, I'm gonna get to that plan there if I can. Nope. It's down the ways here. Sorry. Thought I had it up there, but I guess not. Here it is. That kind of shows it. Here it is, right here. I went the wrong way. So it'll actually run off to the west and to the south, and then it just sheet flows off. It's not going to be concentrated. It's all going to be contained within the property. It all runs off towards Highway 16. Any of the parking areas that are currently part of Cassandra's actually does flow to the southeast, which would then get into the pond area there. They did provide a landscape plan. On that landscape plan, they're going to have trees that are going to be proposed for the west side and the south side of the building, as well as they have to relocate the dumpster, and they're going to just shift it to the north in the parking lot, and then they've got some plantings proposed for the north side of the dumpster on that. So when you come in the driveway, there should be some landscaping to hide that. It will be an enclosed dumpster as it is now on that. There's no new lighting being proposed that I could see. As I mentioned, no change in the existing hours of operation. As we said, the showroom's use is really for the newer pre-owned vehicles and watercraft. I think that is, I want to go one more, which is the architecture here is kind of shown, perspective view. The architect is here, if you have any questions about the architecture, but this is what the view would be from the south side. If you were to move this forward, I'm recommending approval of the conditional use. I gave you a draft conditional use. It's an amendment, so it just has those items that we have discussed tonight as being different. I'm recommending the site plan and plan of operation approval for the plans noted there. My recommendation is, as we deal with these, we got two items on the same plan. We've got the Lake Country Toy Box as well as the Cassandra. So my recommendation is, if you were to move forward, we'd approve the site plan and site grading plan as it relates to Cassandra's Motorsports, prepared by CJ Engineering, dated 7/12/22. The landscape plan as it relates to Cassandra's Motorsports, same date, by Insight Design, and architectural plans prepared by Galbraith Carnahan Architects, and all those are dated 7/12/22. So,
So there's no change to the operation of
not, they have told me that, I mean, from the information we received, there's no change to the operation. It's the same
the hours stay
operation,
the
it's just
same.
an additional showroom.
looks like a nice building.
Just trying to clean it up.
Tim, can you go back to the drawing of the building there? I assume the dark gray are those windows?
That's all glass.
Yeah, okay.
I think we're gonna add a land and stone feature to it possibly, which I'd bring up. That what's getting approved can handle it. It's just gonna be a thin veneer stone, but. And that'll all be black framed, black glass.
So it will be black, or is it?
Well, it's considered black, I believe,
Black frame, but the glass would be.
Oh,
like a tinted
And-
blackish.
did I get the colors? My understanding is the colors of the building are gonna be the two-tone,
Yeah.
gray and,
But
okay.
the existing,
Aluminum
they
frame,
might
okay.
call it a dark bronze. It looks brownish black to me.
For
The
what?
existing building has the same glass framework on it.
Okay, okay.
So it's gonna be a match.
But the current building is not those colors. Correct?
The building is the two-tone gray.
Is it the two-tone gray?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Did you paint it recently?
I painted the whole building,
Yeah.
according to
Okay.
the original agreement that I gave you.
Okay.
Any Any other questions or discussion?
This isn't gonna be lit up at night, is it?
The lights are not changing.
Okay.
Well, let me be a little bit more specific. Is the you said it's all gonna be glass. Is it gonna be lit on the
Lights
inside?
on the outside are set by sensors. They're supposed to.
No, the
I
lights
say
on,
supposed to go off at like about 8 o'clock at night.
yeah, no, the lights in the parking lot are all good. My question is, so in the showroom, there's gonna be glass facing Highway 16. Is the showroom,
During the day and when it turns dark out, they'll be light on, but they'll be turned off as all the other lights are turned off in the showroom when we leave.
okay,
It's set.
cool.
Okay. Per your plan of operation. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And as time goes on, all the lights will get more sophisticated where these sensors will all work, where they'll turn off when the times they're supposed to and turn on when they're supposed to, so that none of the neighbors get upset, but we really don't have the neighbors.
I have been by it at night, and the lights, the parking lot lights have been reduced substantially at night that
Yeah, no,
I've seen, so.
It's,
That's good.
they're doing everything that we asked them to do
Yep.
when we
All
approved
good.
it, so it's all good.
Yeah.
If nobody has any other questions, I am ready to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the site plan and site grading plan as it relates to Cassandra Motorsports expansion prepared by CJ Engineering dated 7/12/22. A motion to approve the landscape plan as it relates to Cassandra Motorsports expansion prepared by Insight Landscape Design dated 7/12/22. And approval of the architectural plans as it relates to Cassandra Motorsports expansion prepared by Galbraith Carnahan Architects LLC dated 7/12/22.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We also need a motion on the conditional use amendment. Which is just,
Will make,
and the only issue for our discussion was whether we needed more parking, which I can't imagine we need more parking.
I don't think we need more parking. I think the parking's okay with it on that property.
In the motion, if you make it, there's a typo in paragraph 1 under conclusions of law, if you could ask that the typo in paragraph 1 be fixed.
Well, on the parking, I thought there was no requirement.
We can,
He has 30, but
He
it's
has
not by
30.
requirement.
but the
Right,
code-
but, so
code
the
would
plan
technically-
commission can determine if that is adequate. I believe it's adequate for the operation that they have.
At this
We've
time, I
never had a
believe it is,
problem
right?
with it.
Okay.
And so,
Well, and as they move more cars from the existing outside showroom lot to the inside showroom lot, they theoretically create more parking spaces
Yeah.
in any event.
Yeah. But the 30 is not part of any conditional use. It's just what they have.
it's what they have out there right now.
Yeah.
For marked stalls for employees, and they did not mark stalls for the lot, the sales lot. They just left that blank, I
Just put
think.
parallel
The
lines.
lines, so they could park them straight, but there's no stalls.
And
they
we
have-
don't need to codify the 30.
I think, I don't think so, no.
Okay.
I think we, no.
Where's the typo, Chairman Fitzgerald?
Paragraph 1 under the conclusions of law, it's
Oh,
not
okay.
operating as a restaurant. Tavern.
Sorry.
You're so picky.
Somebody read it.
Yeah, I see that. I make a motion to approve the conditional use amendment for Cassandra Motorsports with the correction of the conclusions of law in paragraph 1. Typo.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now the fun stuff. Item 5D, site grading, landscape, lighting, architectural, and plan of operation for Lake Country Toy Box Vehicle Storage Facility.
Would you like them to make a presentation, or would you like me to?
Why don't you tee it up, and then we'll have them make a presentation, because
Okay.
there's a lot.
All right, so we have seen this before. They were in, I believe, in May. Kind of showed us, not much has changed. I think we've got more detail on a lot of the plans that we requested on this. What I have up there is the site plan for it. They are proposing 47 condominium units. They're each 30 by 50 feet. They would, the intent is for storage of vehicles, boats, and motorhomes. Staff looked at consideration of whether this should be a self-storage conditional use or should it be evaluated under the M1 district, and felt that the self-storage district or conditional use is actually for rentals. And a person that owns a whole property that has a number of these, self-storage facilities on it. These will be condominium units, so they will be built and sold and owned separately by various people. So, based on that, we move forward with allowing that under a M1 district, which allows industrial and commercial operations, the character of which complements the surrounding area, which are not for any reason detrimental thereto, which is straight from the code. So that's how we're looking at it. There's gonna, they meet, the buildings meet the required setbacks, offsets, a lot area, lot width. They have 65% open space. They have 67% open space. They're required to have 65. That's taken into account a portion of the outlot 3, and that was the same for the Cassandras. They've kind of split that. They both generate stormwater that goes to the pond. The pond is going to be separately owned, and then therefore each of them can use that open space for that. This particular piece of property does go all the way down to Highway 16. As we said in the certified survey map, it kind of wraps around that pond, but it abuts Highway 16 right of way to the southeast. That land cannot be used for anything because of wetland and high groundwater and so on and so forth, but so all the buildings are on the high side there. As far as the grading and drainage on this site, I'm going to get to the plan here. We'll get back to the architect's plan in a second. This is the grading and drainage plan. It all flows from north to south. The aisles will be paved with asphalt. There's some curb and gutter that's on the north side of the middle tier and the southern tier that will capture that water. They have a storm sewer system throughout the project that will carry that water and direct it to the pond. The stormwater management report was provided preliminary one was provided to the county. I talked to the county on Friday and they had not received the final one, so they are still in process of reviewing whatever information that they need to review that on behalf of the town. Let's see, there is going to be lighting on this particular site. Each unit will have a single light that's going to be under their balcony, and then there's 5 lights that are pole mounted, 18.5 feet high, and they're located basically there's 3 on the west side, and then and 2 on the east side of the development here. I evaluated those lights in consideration of our proposed lighting plan, which we are going to talk about a little bit today, but they do meet those requirements that we put in there for that. Though at this point in time, we don't have a specific lighting plan to follow, but they do meet the requirements that we were looking for in that. And one of the good parts is their lighting is not as high as what's out there now. They're going to be 18.5 above the ground, and those other ones are substantially higher than that. They have provided a landscape plan. The landscape plan shows plantings substantially on the east side and all the way around and to the south side of the pond. And then there's a row of conifers between Lot 1 and Lot 2 that blocks that. And some landscaping around the entrance of the shared driveway into the toy box itself. There's 49 deciduous trees, 55 conifers, and 17 perennial grasses that they're going to be used out there. So I believe that that's a real good mix of trees and grasses for this site. Let's see. I think one of the bigger things is the plan of operation. We got the plan of operation somewhat piecemeal, but I'm gonna just run through what's in my report to discuss what I understand the plan of operation is. They're gonna be custom-built storage units for vehicles, boats, and motorhomes. No plans to lease the units at this time. Well, no plans to lease the units. Hours of operation are gonna be 24 hours, 7 days a week for condominium owners. They get access by keypad or key fob. Secured gated grounds with video monitoring at the entrance and common areas. There would be an ability to secure individual condominium units with a personal security system. No businesses will be allowed to be run out of the units. They're not asking for any businesses to be run out of there. No overnight sleeping, no outside storage, and all fire codes will be met regarding things like grilling on the outside deck. They did contact the fire department and received comments from the fire chief or one of the staff and have responded to them. They don't anticipate issues related to noise, dust, gas, smoke, toxic matter, or odors, other than what's normal for use of vehicles on that. And then the only products on site that might be of concern would be petroleum products that are normal to operation of vehicles on that. And they indicated that outdoor lighting of the facility will be controlled by a timer on that. Architecture is the two-tone metal, and they're gonna have the doors will have frosted glass to that. And let's see, I think that's all I'll go at this time, I think. The architect is here. If you want more on the architecture, I can show you some of the pictures of the architecture. It really hasn't changed substantially there. Whoops, I gotta go the right way here. There's some of the architecture there.
Yeah, maybe if you just went to the first slides, I guess, of our.
Back to the, go all the way up?
Yeah, right there's fine.
Here, I'll go here.
Joe Galbraith Carnahan Architects, 6404 West North Avenue, Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. We're the architects for the project. You have seen this before. We brought this in May. Substantially, as Tim says, the design is pretty much the way it was before. We have looked at a few tweaks, little minor things. One thing to point out, that while there are 47 condo units, there are 10 or 11 buildings among them, and that's designed because some condo owners may decide to take 2 or 3 condos and make them continuous. They're essentially designed as 1,500 square foot units, but they could be combined, 1, 2, or 3 of those, let's say, combined. So some of the buildings are as small as 2 or 3 of those units, and the largest structure is 6 of those units. So that's right around 9,000 square feet. In conversations with the fire chief, we're well under the sprinkler threshold that would be required for these buildings. And they are going to be constructed out of non-combustible materials, so a steel structure, largely metal siding, and then we'll have some elements in the front for the office. There will be a bathroom, and then there will be a stair to a mezzanine. And the mezzanine is located in such a way towards the front of the unit where the owner can sort of enjoy their possessions overlooking from that balcony into the bay. That's kind of on the backside of the property. Those also on the second floor do come out for an exterior balcony, so that people could get outside and enjoy some sunshine. All of the doors face south, so there's that nice natural light that comes into the units. So this is a floor plan of the largest building that we would have. That's the 6 unit, and you can see how this would be divided up if there were 6 individual parcels. Two of the units are designed with a taller garage door, and that's for the custom RV.
What's
Yeah,
the height
clients.
of the normal garage door?
The height of the normal garage door, I believe, is 10 feet. And then the one for the RV is 14, so it's a higher.
So they're 2-foot panels.
Yeah, correct. I think that's pretty well standard for that type of door, so. And they're all glass, they're the frosted glass fronts. I don't know if you want to go to the next slides, if there's. Okay, into the elevation. Yeah, here's a typical side elevation and a typical front. So you can see the difference in the typical bay is that 10-foot door, and then when we get over to, let's say, an RV bay, it goes up. The balcony doesn't extend across because you can't extend the balcony across a door that's high. And then there's a man door on each of the units that gives access into the office. The side elevation, you can see there's a single slope roof that pitches toward the back that works with the grading plan, so the drainage works that way. There's some gutters, downspouts, and then it sheet drains into a series of catch basins in between the properties, and that all collects and funnels towards the stormwater catchment area. There are some translucent panels in the siding. So we have a 2-tone metal, but there's also some translucent windows. That's something that just brings in daylight, and then also at night it glows a little bit. So it has an interesting feature where some of the panels are translucent. So if someone has lights on, it could glow a little bit. Not to any extent where it's casting light, out across any property line or anything. Cable railing will be on the balconies, so that's pretty minimal. There'll be steel verticals and then cable horizontals for that. Let me just click on the next ones, maybe the renderings. Here's just some examples of similar materials where 2-tone type metal panels have been used, translucent garage doors, translucent panels, and then metal roofing. This is, yeah. Yeah, that's a nice view. So kind of that's a sunset view. The light's coming in from the west, kind of highlights the building. I mean, I think the idea here is that these are, sleek metallic boxes that are similar to the cars, with the interesting metal work. So we tried to do something architecturally that was forward, modern, and sleek like that. But generally they face out to that south. They open up to the south. They have a large overhang for shading, sun shading. And that's kind of it. There's driveways that cascade in between each of the units or each of the rows of units. Is that our last slide, I think?
No.
Oh, okay.
Go back one slide for a quick question.
Yeah, for the.
But what's the white things on the roof?
Oh, there were some translucent skylights that we were going to.
Unit's gonna have a skylight.
That's, yeah,
Okay.
correct.
That's fine.
Yeah, just nice natural light that comes in.
Sure.
And the ones on the east, they don't obviously open to the south like all the other ones do? I assume they open
Yeah,
to the
those are
west?
the kind of the exception, just the way the layout had, because we have these transition roads where we get down. So, but that's correct. Yeah, those face west.
So on this picture here, you're not showing like the frosted glass here? Is that
Yeah, it's,
Frosted
that was a
glass.
rendering thing. The intention is that it would be frosted. The upper window probably wouldn't be frosted, but just for security, the lower panels would be frosted glass, so people can't really see clearly what's in there. Right. The upper one's fine because you can't, you're not really seeing that. But the lower ones is, I think we noted it's frosted on the plans. So didn't get picked up in the rendering.
And it's heated and air conditioned. Is it heated with natural gas?
It's,
Well,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah, Joel.
we're intending on using in-floor heating.
Hydronic.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
So the
natural.
mezzanine wouldn't have to be heated, and then people, it'll be set up with air, but people, I think the dollar amount that they're gonna spend, everybody's gonna want their unit air conditioned.
I just don't know where you place the units. It's a lot of units.
Yeah, we don't want any units on the roof.
No, nothing on the
No.
roof.
Mhm.
You don't have a lot of room in between each unit. I mean, there's 6 bolted together. I don't know where you'd put rows of HVAC units.
Put them on the
Well, I
back.
mean, if you absolutely had to, you could build a shelter where you see that motorcycle at each unit, and that could be the condenser for the unit. Even if it was
Yeah, we
done
could-
in some architectural nice gray wood around it, with a door that opened if they had to service it.
That's for the AC. What about the boiler for the
The boiler
hydraulic?
would be inside, same as the hot water heater.
And that is natural gas.
Yeah.
So if someone's gonna, you mentioned that someone might buy 2 or 3 of these. I mean, if they, in a grouping of 6, if someone buys 3, will it still look like this, or is it a different design if they're?
I think it would still look like this,
Yeah,
right?
it'd be identical. To be honest with you, we threw the 14-foot door option on there, but as of to date, there's probably 10, 15 people that are interested in this already. And so far, there's one gentleman has interest in taking 2 units, but thus far, there's no one that has interest in a motorhome.
But you're not, that
Oh,
person
yeah.
isn't, the idea isn't to open, like,
No, it would be the interior walls, not the exterior, wouldn't change.
Right.
okay. So the look that we're seeing now is what it's gonna
Always
look
be
like,
that,
always
yeah.
look like that, okay.
It can't be anything other than what we approve.
Right, I know that, I just wanna make sure of that.
No, and the structure allows for it, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
we're not gonna change the whole structure of these buildings to
Okay.
configure a different system. If someone wants to, they'll lose their parting wall. They're not gonna lose the outside dimension.
So heat's only on the main level.
Yeah, it gets so hot if you put it on the mezzanine,
Yeah, it raises.
and there'll be fans forcing it down, But it's the most efficient and best. If anybody pulls a car, and most of these cars won't be out in the winter, but if someone does, they'll park the car in the morning, it'll be perfectly dry,
Can we, Tim, can we exclude solar panels? Do we want to exclude solar panels? Because that'll go under.
That's a good question. We don't, we allow solar panels as accessory structures, but we have very little code on that.
And it's
Very-
sloped-
very little
It's
code.
sloped the wrong way.
It's sloped the wrong way.
Yeah,
For solar.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
You can change that.
Well,
And it might be wiser to just exclude solar panels.
yeah.
Blatantly, just categorically say no solar panels.
or do we just say that they're not visible from the road? Because I would think on a
But this is gonna
flat
be-
sloped roof like that, if you're on 16, you're not going to see.
No, when you're on Lindale Farms, you'll see them.
You're looking down at it.
For 30 seconds.
How are you planning to handle garbage? I don't see any dumpsters or anything for garbage. Are you gonna, what's the plan to utilize that as a condo association?
Yeah.
Well, it's gonna have to be a joint effort, and I'm assuming that there's gonna, when that project is full built, there's gonna have to be 3 of them, 1 per row.
Dumpsters?
I would have to think it would have to be a dumpster unless we commission a garbage service where these people, once every 2 weeks, put their garbage cans out like residential does. That might be a better option.
That would be a better,
Because they're
It's a little
just-
rolling cart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rolling cart that they roll out, and that's probably the best.
that would be a
bet.
better option.
Yeah.
Instead of
And they-
having a dumpster that we got enclosed. and
Yeah,
sticky
and they just keep it
garbage,
in their unit and it fills
wheel
up
it
and
out,
then you.
pay per unit.
And was there gonna be multiple septic tanks on this property?
I'm not septic, but they're gonna be holding. What did, 2 or 3, right?
Yeah, we figured one for each row,
Yeah.
kind of in the road there.
That, really?
Just because of I mean, just the way the topography works.
You know, and each person is gonna be responsible for the amount of water they use, because there'll be a flow meter on their sewer. So they'll pay for their usage, so I'm sure these people will be quite conscious of the usage of water.
You had indicated that there's going to be owners. Is there any ability to sublease?
We haven't written any. My intention is this is gonna create a community of people who, you know, really appreciate their cars, collect them. And in sense, for my business, I'm gonna create, you know, 50 customers that need their exotic cars service, you know? So it's just more or less gonna be people who like collecting cars, a community for that. And I think whoever buys these are gonna run almost 500,000 apiece. So there's $20 million worth of buildings there. So I don't think the average Joe is gonna be buying these.
But what, how many cars could you put in?
You know, some
like
people
4?
put those lifts, you know, they put 2 lifts, that's 4, they can put 2, people, if they really wanted to pack them in, probably could get 6, 7 cars in there, you know?
So 2 or 3 people could come in together as joint owners, or one person could buy and rent out 3
Yeah.
other spots?
No,
Yeah,
let's
right.
stay with renting a minute. It says on the plan of operation 26, buildings cannot be for rent.
Yeah, I have no intention of renting.
Okay.
Then
And I have
make
no
that a-
That's
intention
gonna
of
be-
people subleasing them either.
Yeah.
I just did, unfortunately, I was out of state for the last meeting, so I don't know 100% was written, but my intention is that people don't lease these, or businesses. It's just for people that wanna collect cars. And
Yeah, no business, no,
They probably, you know, they'll be there maybe once or twice a week if lucky, you know what I mean? They'll come on a weekend, take their car out for a drive, is what I see. I can't predict the future.
And I was just noting subleasing because it was very specifically in the report that they wouldn't be leased. and
Right.
That they were going to be owned. And so I
Right.
wouldn't want someone to own it, like, for example, an LLC, and then sublease it
Yeah,
out, which basically just defeats the purpose.
yeah.
Well, and that's what we're
Well,
gonna,
I think that was written into the condo docs though, wasn't it? I'm not sure.
Well, we have to get those.
Yeah, so we'll
That's
make
a
sure that
condition of
that's-
the
Well,
approval.
it'll be
to-
a
to
condition
get-
of the approval will be no.
I wanted to.
I
don't
I
want
was,
people
the information I
subleasing
was given is that you're not gonna lease,
No.
period, and that was a very simple statement, and so that's,
And that's a fairly
Oh, I accept
significant restriction on a landowner. I mean, we wouldn't say you couldn't lease your house if you
Right.
were, you know, decided to move out of state for 2 years but wanted to keep your house. We would typically say you can rent your house, but I agree that for this type of property, we,
Yeah, I'm definitely not gonna lease it.
okay.
Well, I guess I'm less concerned about you than the individuals who
Owners.
are
Right.
own, because you're
Oh, yeah.
selling it, you're indicating that they're being sold, not leased. Therefore, the subsequent owners would have to not be leasing it either, otherwise it defeats the purpose.
Right, and that's my concern. Somebody spends 500,000 to buy one, but wants someone to pay rent on it, so he rents out a stall in his condo.
Can't do that. Which leads me to a really interesting question. What if they do it? What's our recourse? If somebody does
that's a good
buy
question.
this and buy a lift and say, Ed, you can have 4 cars on this lift and I'll have 4 cars on my lift and you just pay me $1,000 a month.
I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but the people that are gonna rent these, they're gonna have $600,000-$700,000 cars, and they're not gonna want other people around their stuff. These people are real finicky,
Yeah, I would agree, most are.
you know, if they're gonna make that investment, I don't think they're gonna make that investment in the intention of making it a viable business. I think it's just gonna be for their person, and anyone that I've talked to so far, and I'm sure we can address some type of language in condo docs, because I don't want them leasing them either.
And I guess that's the question.
I think it's a
I would say-
legitimate concern, Ron. I think that we need to be very tight on that because, I mean,
Wouldn't you think if you put in it, developer or future buyers, like absolutely no subleasing of any sort?
It's a, set it up as a deed restriction.
Yeah.
It's a
I-
deed. But it's not just,
But his,
for it.
Ron's
not just
point is,
subleasing,
Who
it's the
enforces
same
it? Who
enforcement
enforces it?
issue on
Yeah.
overnight stays.
Right.
And, you know,
yeah,
because I thought we didn't want anybody overnight spending the
We
night.
already wrote that they can't, it's
Well, I-
open 24/7, but no one can spend the night in it, I think is the way it was approved, wasn't it?
right, but it's not a problem of what you're saying that they're not gonna do, it's the problem of, what if they do it?
How do we enforce
What
it?
do we do, and how do we, I mean, we
Could
have,
be long gone. And
we have no recourse unless it's a,
He'll be next door.
even a,
No, I meant, you'll have sold them all.
even a deed restriction makes
be
it
right next
difficult
door.
as well, because it's just like, if you own your house, you can lease it out, and we can't do anything about it, you
Well,
know?
the state Supreme Court came down with a pretty strong rule that towns got in trouble for not allowing Airbnbs.
Right, yes.
And they came and fixed that. So
Yeah.
now we have to do it. We can limit them
We can limit that, yeah.
time in between, and we can say you can do it for no more than 5 days, or you can do it for a full year, but you can't do 5 days and 2 days and 8 days, and you can't do that.
In terms of hours of operation, I know you said 24/7, but is there, I mean, since it's all electronic with a keypad, can you lock it from midnight to 5 AM? Because what goes,
Well,
what
some
good
guy
happens
leaving
between?
town and has to get in to get his car or something, you know? I don't know how I would do that. I would segregate or, you know.
Well, it'd be, again, you just lock the keypad at midnight for 5 hours.
I suppose if it ever became a problem, like I could have to re-change the rules, but I don't foresee these type of people that are gonna be hell raisers or people in there all hours of the night, you know? It's not that clientele.
Are you concerned about, I mean, if it's a gate there that, at the driveway, you're concerned that,
Well, we had the same discussion with the actual storage lockers down on Highway 18, where we said, you've got electronic locks on all of your buildings.
Yeah.
Just disable them during the hours we want you to be closed. And we told, I think in the storage facility, it was probably 10 PM, and then
Yeah.
5:30 or 6 in the morning. And so I'm just saying, does somebody really need to get in to see their car at 2 o'clock in the morning? Or could we,
Only if they're very
could
long.
the gate be?
Well, but they should need, no one should need to, I guess that's the point.
Well,
No one
and do
should
we
need
want
to.
the, and again, I realize it's Lindell Road and there's not a lot of traffic and the only thing there is another business that is closed at that hour of the day. But even from a standpoint of policing or something, if someone sees a car driving down these aisles at 2 o'clock in the morning, that would, raise suspicions as to why is there a car driving through these condos at 2
But there
o'clock?
will be full surveillance. If there is ever an issue, you'll be able to find out who is the person that's doing it.
Well, it's my understanding there's a gate too. You're not gonna be able to get to, you're gonna have to get past the gate to get in there.
Yeah?
Right, but
It'll be on camera
again,
when you go in, and there'll be cameras in the facility.
I'm thinking of the wayward son of one of these nice owners
Yeah,
who
no,
has his
I'm-
car and
Yeah.
he's got his dad's key card, key
Right.
fob, and he decides to go party at 2 AM at dad's condo.
The difference I see is that these
Boston
are,
Ferris Bueller's Day
these are
Off, so-
owned by the people that are going to them, and they're not being rented as
True.
Floggers was.
True, but we don't allow any business to be open 24 hours. I guess we're saying this isn't a business.
But it's an owned condo from a condo plat, so we don't also restrict people from going into their dwelling units either, so.
But it's not a dwelling.
It's not a dwelling, no, but it is an owned,
It's individually owned.
and if there's a security issue and they can't get access to it for some reason, that might be a burden to them too. Or if they're storing boats and, like we use the example of someone wants to go fishing at 4 a.m, they want to pick up their boat.
Yeah.
We shouldn't.
Does it present a bigger liability issue too, if we are indicating when they can't get at their asset?
That's a good point.
I like the design, I like the detail. I think the devil's in
Those condo documents.
the condo documents and the plan of operation. And I'm very concerned about how we actually enforce any violation of it on a unit-by-unit basis.
Well, I think typically in a condo, the enforcement is left with the HOA board.
Okay.
But that's what the condo documents will say. The question is, does the town have an enforcement right as well? I would say if we put it in the deed restrictions, perhaps, but by the time it gets to us,
Well, I'm not opposed to putting in a deed restriction.
I'm also gonna manage this facility, me and my wife, so.
Yeah, your wife's not gonna put up with much.
Price puts up with me.
One thing that we had, that we mentioned last time was whether the communities that are directly around were also notified, just so at least they, we were neighborly because it's across the street.
Yeah.
And there's lights and it's glowing and things like that. We didn't anticipate problems, but I know we talked about that. I don't know if that occurred.
Not that I heard.
We did notices as to what we do for conditionally used permit that we send out 300 feet.
So Lindale Farms? I mean, that's,
Dale Farms, all the properties, there were some properties in Lisbon, there were some properties in Merton. I think there were 13 total properties.
okay.
And they were given the notices?
They were given notices, yeah.
Okay.
Mailed 2 or 3 weeks before the public hearing.
What exactly are we being asked to approve tonight?
A site plan, a site grading plan, a fire access exhibit, a landscaping plan,
And plan
a
of
lighting
operation.
plan, and an architectural plan. And they'll all be subject to any other conditions that we would want to put on them at this meeting tonight, and subject to an approval of a stormwater management plan by Waukesha County, and then submission and approval of a condominium plat and declarations.
But
And
we're
would
not
it,
approving the plan of operation.
yes, that would be
Yes,
part of it.
Yes, we are not.
Yes, we are.
I'm not ready to do that.
Okay.
I'm ready I'm ready for most everything else, but I'm not ready to approve the plan of operation until I see the condo plan.
Okay.
Myself, but I'm
Yeah.
only one vote. So,
No, I think, I'd like to see a plan as well. It just seems like they go together and,
I would think so.
Yes.
yeah.
Well, if we give them a green light on everything, they can't open until they start building anyway, so.
Yeah, but they can
bring-
start construction and.
Right,
start
come
planning.
back with the plan of,
What type of restrictions are you gonna put on it before I build them and start telling people they can buy them? I have to be honest and upfront, right?
well, I think
We
we've,
have to be honest and upfront too.
Yeah,
we'll,
so
we've,
I-
we've-
be on the
we'll,
same
we'll,
page.
we'll tell you what the
We'll
conditions
all
are.
have to be on the same
Yeah,
page, I guess.
we'll tell you what the conditions are, which I think is basically no rentals, no leasing, no
Yeah, I agree
subleasing.
100% with that.
Yeah, it's not that you don't disagree, and
No,
we're
I
trying to be
agree
very
100%.
Let him
transparent.
finish, please.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's not that you don't disagree, and we're trying to be extremely transparent, but it's what what recourse does the town have if someone violates it? And we need to talk to our attorney and see what we can and cannot do, especially in the renting, in the Supreme Court change, late last year on short-term
agree.
rentals. So we need homework. But the plan of operation, it's gonna be, I'm not kidding, it's gonna be strict. It's gonna say, we don't want, what if I'm sitting there and two guys are enjoying their cars and they have one too many scotches? And it's 10 o'clock and they say, well, I'm gonna sleep on the couch and you can sleep on the chair. And, I mean, that's staying overnight. That's against the plan of operation.
But we're not talking about putting in more restrictions, we're really talking about how do we enforce.
How do we
I mean-
enforce and how do we codify?
I mean, the
making
restrictions are no overnight stays, and no leasing, subleasing, or renting.
Well, I'd like to see also no solar panels, no garbage dumpsters, you know, the things
Yeah,
we already
right,
talked about.
right. And the site plan has no dumpsters, so we're approving a site plan with no dumpsters.
And what would be the concern over the solar panels again?
I'm not expressing a real concern, it's just gonna, solar panels go on the roof. Right now, it's a real clean roof line with sunlights, or skylights on the roof of every building. And the same reason we don't wanna have air conditioning units on the roof, because it's somewhat unattractive. And seen, it's not gonna be seen from Highway 16, but it's gonna be seen from Lindale Road and maybe even KE, so,
Do we have to say something to with where the AC would be in a plan?
yeah, we should.
I mean, and that's, I guess, my concern, that when we did the Cassandra's Motorsports initially, it was kind of like hand-drawn landscaping plans, and it felt a little rushed. You know, it seems
Yeah.
like the homework isn't done before the meeting, it's done like immediately before, where we got something, I think, handed to us that Tim had the only original, and it was brought up at the last minute, and that was, it'd be nice to see some of these documents together and be able to look at them and review them, is my opinion.
Well, or just say, we're developed a lighting plan that we're gonna finalize shortly, hopefully. And the next, after the lighting plan, we're gonna develop a landscaping plan that could, the lighting plan took 9 months. But we could always approve it, subject that the landscaping plan, agrees or corresponds with the ordinance that the town creates. And we could say the same thing with the lighting plan, make it retroactive. This is our lighting plan, it's not totally done yet, but when it's done, you have to follow it. This is our landscaping plan, you have to follow it, and make it retroactive.
That might be something to check with the attorney on then. I mean,
Well, there's a lot, I mean, I don't know, Nicole, part of me says, as a lawyer, part of me says you cannot exclude solar panels. I don't even know if it's legal for us to exclude solar panels being on a building.
I would have thought not.
I would too. So but I think there's certain things in here that we have to do our homework and study and go get legal advice. But I don't wanna hold you up either. So, I mean, I wanna get bogged in the detail, but not, the design's great, the plot's already approved, the conceptual plan's great. We just have to figure out the
Yeah, but we have, I mean, I agree with a few of the items, Ron. I do think, you know, if we need legal advice on whether we can ban solar panels, although I guess we could take a vote and see if we want to ban them.
And relative to my question about the concern over the solar panels, is that if that technology evolves, right, so there isn't necessarily that higher ridge to the ceiling, right? If we say it's out altogether, are we limiting what these owners or the could
What
have
if somebody
later on?
wanted their skylight to be a solar panel instead of a skylight? Optically, it would look
Here,
the same.
Go further. Say someone wants to put a solar field in the outlot.
Sure.
That might be a viable solution too. So,
No, but that's a site plan change. See, that we at least have control over. They can't do,
I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. I'm just saying there's a lot of things I just don't, there's a lot of unknowns and I get nervous when I have unknowns.
So if we do have to go back and do our homework on some of these things to the points given, what at least is the appropriate protocol for that?
well,
I'm sorry. I just wanted to point out that part of this approval is it's conditional on a submission and approval of the condominium plot and declaration.
yeah. So we can
So
make the
that
approval
You
conditioned on
can
those.
later
Yeah, the approval's-
approve that, where
That's-
Ritz, all the language that you want is written into it, after you talk to your attorney.
Could we also include the plan of operation, not just the condo? Because we could have
Well,
conflicting documents. We could have a condo plan that says one thing and a plan of operation that allows something else.
But I think you're saying that they're actually one and the same. I think the condo plot is, the operation also. It's written into the condo.
Is there an actual plan of operation in those materials?
In the conditional use.
No.
This isn't a conditional
Oh,
use,
that's
though.
right. It's an M, yeah.
No, there's no, I mean, I didn't.
It's in your
I didn't-
memo.
I did not get a full document there was pieces, like part of the application, part of an email, that I created that plan of operation based on responses that I've requested.
is there a reason that there's not a written plan of operation, other than just that it wasn't
Yeah.
completed by the owner?
Normally, we get it on the application, and it's very, sometimes it's complete, sometimes it's not as complete on that. And a lot of times, if we have a conditional use, it's written into the conditional use. Those are the conditions. It's really,
Right,
the
but this
plan of
is a permitted
operation is the
use.
conditional use, so.
But the plan of operation is where we would put our conditions. Or the approval of the
Yes.
plan of operation is where we would put our
Correct.
conditions. So if we approve the site plan and the landscaping plan and the grading plan so they can start moving dirt, but we ask for a formal plan of operation to come back with all the requirements that you've already outlined from the various sources, we do our diligence and attach to the plan of operation by then hopefully the condo document, so we don't even need to make it contingent upon that. We could approve everything but the plan of operation and the condo documents tonight, hypothetically, and get those next month or the month after, whenever.
The only thing I would say is the plan of operation is kind of a key element of everything else. If you disagree with the plan of operation that comes back next month and want to deny it based on their plan of operation, if there's changes or whatever, or not enough information there, then we've already
Well,
granted approvals. That's why the plan of operation is important to, if we
I'm
have.
not ready to approve a plan of operations, so but that's only, I'm just one vote. I'll do,
I'm more worried about where they're putting the air conditioners. We don't have a plan. I mean,
all of that stuff, garbage dumpsters, air conditioners, leasing,
Well, and it sounds
Well-
also like they, you know, they don't want to start selling until we've approved the plan. So it seems like the first thing is getting the plan and finding out where the air conditioners are.
Well, it's the chicken or the egg argument,
things are
basically.
gonna sell like hotcakes. I've checked out the
Yeah.
market. It is a hot market. You go to, I talked to someone just over the weekend who lives down in Florida, and he's convinced it's gonna sell like hotcakes. People want these things. They want a place for their toys, their little man caves. Now, with that said, he also laughed at me when I said we're not gonna allow people to sleep overnight there. I thought it was quite humorous. It's gonna be really hard to enforce. And I think he's right. It's gonna be really hard to enforce. Which is fine. We just need to go into it with our
Understand.
eyes open, knowing it's gonna be really hard to enforce.
most code enforcement is based on neighbor complaint.
And there aren't really neighbors.
Two guys sleeping over because they had too much to drink one night. I don't think we're gonna get a neighbor's complaint. But that's a different issue. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I think the plan of operation needs to reflect whatever documents they submit with their condo restrictions. And I think that's the key to enforcement, is that it's not just outlined in the restrictions of the condo, it's outlined in the plan of operation. Because if they break a condo association rule, there's not much the town will say except go to your condo association to resolve it. If it's in the plan of operation, we can step in and then force their condo association to deal with it. So I think there is a difference between the two. But I think it's important that they're aligned and they're similar.
I mean, I could go along with landscaping plan approval, subject to the town ordinance that's coming, lighting plan approval, subject to everything that's here, plus the town ordinance, and exclude the plan of operation at this time. I think it's a really nice project, and I'd like to see it in the town. I think it's a nice use of the land, and it shows creativity and a commitment to the community.
I don't answer any questions that these people ask me if I don't have an answer to them. But
Well, I think the answer is that we table, item 4B here until we get those condo documents, because it sounds like the devil's gonna be in the details, and those condo documents are gonna answer a lot of these questions.
I think it's helpful just for us and also for the landowner to all, the
So that we're all
documents,
aligned,
let us be on the same page.
Right.
That's the point.
you had said the condo documents were in draft, or? was your
Here's the
attorney-
situation. Reinhardt is drafting them,
Okay.
and I believe that Debbie Tomczyk, who's drafting them, also knows your legal counsel.
Eric,
And I thought they came to an agreement that it was best to finalize them after you guys had this meeting, is what I remember her telling me.
nothing's, to my knowledge, nothing's been discussed at the monthly meetings I have with Eric and Tim and Dan have with Eric.
I'm just telling you what my attorney told me.
Yeah,
I don't
very
know.
well could be.
Yeah, I don't know if she talked to anybody, but that's what she said. She said, if you pay me to prepare these till this meeting's over, hey, you're just wasting your money.
Well, I think we've given, and it's in the materials that Tim prepared from your own submissions. I don't think we're coming up with any restrictions that you would put in the condo documents or your plan of operation that haven't been documented in these materials and discussed tonight. No sleeping over, no rentals, no subleasing. You gotta figure out what you're doing with garbage.
Yeah,
And then you gotta tell us where the air conditioners are going.
Yep.
But whether we decide to exclude or not exclude solar panels is about the only item that I don't think we've reached a decision on. So I would suggest, to Dan's point, if you could submit the condo documents with an actual plan of operation using, kind of the format that Tim will get you, I don't think it'll be as long as the meeting as tonight was, because I don't think there's any real disagreement on what we all want to see there, and it's basically what you proposed. But when we asked questions like, where's the air conditioner going? And you went, good question, we didn't really draw that anywhere.
Well, that would be a good one for him.
Well, and
You
you
said
got,
that, I looked at it and I go, yeah,
Where are they? I'm assuming they'd be on the back and be camouflaged by the landscaping, but,
have a landscape ad that's pretty sizable.
yeah. But that's our point, that we can't approve the architectural plan if it's not 100% done yet. But we can approve,
The back of these units are the front of these units.
well, but if you look at the ones with the landscaping, you see that they're heavily landscaped between the,
I wouldn't say heavily, they're
well,
there's
there's
a few
landscaping
trees
behind the
back
units
there.
before the driveways.
Not,
It is a few, I mean, but 17 grasses is.
Not-
like
not
my front
many.
yard. I mean, it's not.
yeah.
Yeah, all right,
But
well,
they have trees in various places, so.
Yeah.
so,
I know we can come up with an agreement where Tim feels that where we put the air conditioner, that he can agree upon.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah,
I think
right
we
here.
can too.
you got this,
I mean,
the road's
if-
here, you
Can
got
we
this
make a
space.
recommendation that staff's approval of where we locate the air conditioners?
But it's also the plan of operation.
And the condo
the
documents.
condo
We need
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, we need to approve-
He's gonna give me the minutes and then I'm gonna take, or what he,
Yeah.
the points he wants, I'm gonna take in my attorney and have her do a rough draft, send it over to you guys so you can say, nah, we don't like this, or we
Yeah.
do, or.
And we'll get that done at the next meeting, if you got it done.
So, I mean, if you wanna, if the plan commission wants to do it this way, I mean, the recommendation is pretty clear. We have a bunch of plans that we are generally in agreement with.
Yeah.
We've added, they're all, those approvals are subject to whatever conditions we wanna add, and I've listed them, no dumpsters, I'm saying no solar panels, where's the air conditioners going? There are definitely some conditions that they have to address, okay? But then, I mean, they can't start anything until we get the condo plat and the declarations. Technically, I mean,
Yeah.
you said they get them going. They can't go, they can start their architectural plans in detail, but they wouldn't be able to
That's gonna take
put a
2
shovel in the
months.
ground
Right, until they get
till
the.
that's
How long
done.
will the architectural plans take to draft in detail, construction drawings?
Yeah, it's gonna take.
2 to 3 months. Okay, I'm building a house right now, I know exactly how long. it's
So,
gonna take.
so I'm just saying that
So-
we can move it ahead knowing that
So
I
all
don't
the
think it's
sub,
being unreasonable to say, we'll give you what you're asking for, but we'll exclude the condo,
The plan of
rules
operation and
and
the
the plan of operation. I don't think that's unreasonable at all.
yeah, so approve
Which
everything
is,
else.
in essence, what we're doing, because it's all subject to the condo plat and declarations coming in, but
And the plan of
we'll add the
operation.
plan of operation to that, so at the next meeting, we would anticipate seeing maybe the condo docs and the plat, if they have enough time to get it done.
I guess my concern is, what's the harm in waiting until we get to see the condo docs? Like, I understand we can like approve this contingent on it, but I guess we do that too many times, and then, it's the chicken or the egg.
Well,
So,
But I don't want to approve the plan of operation or the big issue. I think we're going to say, we'll approve the site plan, we'll approve the landscaping plan, we'll approve the lighting plan, subject to final approval of the plan of operation and the condo docs. So we can get the little plans a green light. Because I don't think we've had,
well, yeah, I don't think there's any disagreement on the plans that are presented. It's just, the several conditions and then subject on.
well, and is the site plan got to be changed if they do dumpsters or move air conditioners?
I mean, yeah, they'll add a location for the air conditioners, they'll,
I can answer
it's very minimal.
Right.
And they address some of these other things in their actual, we'll ask for a document, a plan of operation document on that.
Yeah.
I think, Edward, just to get to the point is, I mean, I think they're looking for, is this gonna be a yes or a no? It's not a yes yet. It's not a no yet, so they'll be in limbo for another month. Unless Tom wants to just have them spend money on the architecture and take the risk.
But they'll be in limbo for another month, but not anything associated with the actual physical design or construction of the structures. Because we're not changing, other than adding someplace to put an HVAC unit and air conditioning. We're not changing, we've accepted the materials, we've accepted the design, we've accepted 10-foot doors, we've accepted 14-foot.
Well, but we haven't. We've discussed it. That's why I'm suggesting if we actually approve these sub-plans, then we will have accepted it, conditioned upon having to agree on the plan of operation and the condo document.
Can we approve the grading plan if they haven't gotten stormwater approvals from Waukesha County yet?
Well, it would be subject to.
That one would be
It's
subject
subject
to
to
Waukesha
that,
County.
but I don't anticipate a change in the general grading of the site.
Okay.
It's just the pond may have to be tweaked a little bit here and there, we don't know yet.
Is there risk to you and your investors? Yes, there's always risk. Are we being unreasonable? I personally don't think we are. I think we're really trying, we like your project in our town.
I don't think you're being unreasonable, but I think based on the approval of the things you have in front of them, you might be, if you don't approve that based, I agree it's gotta be conditional on the operation, you approving where the air conditioners go, there's gonna be no dumpsters, and, everything, no sales, no rental, no overnight, that everything that he draws out that he wants in the condo docs that I present to you from my attorney. But I don't think we're gonna change the structure of it, I don't think we're gonna change the layout, we're not gonna change the landscaping unless there's something that's obnoxiously wrong with it. I'm sure the lighting, by the time you guys vote on a new one, he's gonna, whoever's designing my lighting is gonna meet the
Well,
restrictions.
Tim
you
already said it
have.
meets the one we haven't even passed yet. so-
That's great.
so.
No, we're not changing building materials or design or anything. You pretty much have a free reign to start drawing.
So would you be okay with a motion to recommend the approval of some of these things contingent on the submission and approval of the condo plat declarations and the plan of operation? Or would you rather we hold this off and wait until we get all those documents and approve it all at once?
The only two documents I want to see and approve all at once are the plan of operation and the condo docs.
So we could approve everything else contingent upon our review and approval of those two documents, which is what Ed just suggested.
If that's what he just suggested, then
Well, I would like to make a motion to approve the following plans, the site plan and site grading plan as it relates to the Lake Country Toy Boxes prepared by CJ Engineering dated 7/12/22, the fire access exhibit as it relates to Lake Country Toy Box prepared by CJ Engineering dated June 14th, 2022, the landscape plan as it relates to Lake Country Toy Box prepared by Insight Landscape Design dated July 12th, 2022, the lighting plan as it relates to Lake Country Toy Box prepared by Insight Landscape Design dated 7/12/22, the architectural plans as it relates to Lake Country Toy Box prepared by Gilbrath Carnahan Architects LLC dated July 12th, 2022, subject to the resolution of the following conditions prior to any site work or issuance of a building permit at Lake Country Toy Box Site Lot 2 and Outlot 1. Any conditions requested by the Plan Commission at the August 2nd, 2022 meeting, that's looking into the no dumpsters, looking into whether or not we're gonna allow solar panels or not, and there was a third one. And the air, and the location of the AC units. Approval of the stormwater management plan by Waukesha County. If the stormwater management plan review results in requiring significant changes to the site plan, the applicant must gain Plan Commission approval of the revised site plan, and then submission and approval of a condominium plat and declarations along with a plan of operation. Is that everything?
I think so.
What about this, so maybe not, staff approval and recording of a shared driveway easement?
No, that was on the
That was
CSM.
on the-
That was on the CSM.
Oh, yeah, staff approval and recording of the shared driveway easement for access to Lot 2 and Lot 1, and Waukesha County approval of holding tanks at the site. Holding tank agreement approval by the town board and submission of a bond in accordance with current town of Delafield ordinance related to the holding tanks.
Excellent motion. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So bring a plan of operation condo documents as soon as you got them done. Talk to Tim.
And I'm very serious when I say it, we want your development in the town. It's a
I think
nice
it's a great
development.
site that I'm trying to do the best I can.
You just did, you guys
And
just did that.
you were reasonable to work with the other project, and that carries, good faith carries a long way.
I hope it looks a lot nicer than it did.
Oh, yeah.
That's
And the way they answer any question they taught you in law school the first week, you just say, it depends.
I always say I feel strong in both ways.
Yeah. It depends.
Yep.
Cut and paste from your memo, Tim. Item 5C, Town of Delafield Plan Commission, review draft of lighting ordinance. You can make a motion, Ron.
Ed makes a motion.
What do you wanna do this?
Ron wants to table it.
All right, we'll do it.
Well,
I mean,
just initially, I appreciate the work and the effort that everybody has put into this. It's really good, but I just have a lot of concerns about how are we gonna enforce this? I understand we can enforce the commercial stuff a little bit better than the residential stuff, but you know,
you raise a very good point, Ed. When we drafted it, we spent a lot of time. I mean, 3 zones, right? Commercial, real easy. We've always regulated commercial lighting without an ordinance. We know how to do that. We just wrote it down as an ordinance. The other end of the spectrum, agricultural. Nicole tells us, you don't want to regulate that because they need to put lights on their barns to see their animals. Okay, we're not going to regulate that. It's the residential. And how do we regulate it? Do we regulate it only prospectively? Do we regulate it retroactively? Do we get into the minutia of 60-watt bulbs in lampposts? Do we mandate lights being turned off at 10 p.m. when houses don't have timers and things of that? You know, I mean, there's a lot here. I agree. So I don't know if we want to try to get into it tonight or if we want to take time and look at it. I would suggest the only area that's difficult is the residential, but that's 90% of the town is
residential.
And that's where all the complaints will be. I mean, we did discuss, you know, enforcement was generally going to be based upon neighbor complaint, and we were literally thinking we have to define who the neighbor is. Because someone driving down a road that doesn't like a house that's lit up isn't a neighbor.
Go further than that, someone on the south shore of the lake who doesn't like the homes
On the north
the
side.
lights on a certain home on the north side of the lake.
Yeah, I'm
Well, I
aware.
think you had indicated that there are some issues with people directly across
Yeah,
from, in a lake, you know, it basically
Yeah.
bounces off and goes into someone else's house.
Yeah, there are,
And so,
there's an
but,
exact issue right now.
but, you know, at what distance do you allow, you know, a complaint that would then drive enforcement? And enforcement is not an easy thing either. I mean, who's going to go out there and turn off the lights?
How are you gonna measure that it's a violation?
Well, that's all part of the discussion.
Is this something we wanna dump onto Eric?
Well, but I think at some point, we will have to.
We have to make policy decisions. Eric can't write it. We need to make policy decisions. I mean, we can make policy decision. We don't want to regulate residential lighting any more than we regulate agricultural lighting. I don't think that's
It's not.
the direction we're likely to go, but
You're still gonna have residents call the town clerk and say, this guy's light is shining directly in my bedroom every night, and I'm not able to go to sleep.
And I forward those calls to Ron Troy, so
Yeah.
that works just fine. I think enforcement,
you're like, this is exactly what I wanna do, is regulate lights in people's bedrooms. So,
I don't wanna regulate anything in people's bedrooms.
exactly, I agree.
from a staff perspective, enforcement's going to be impossible. It's going to be nearly impossible. We have no way of proving the light, going beyond unless we send a building inspector at 9 o'clock at night to the
light
property.
candle, yeah.
Right, and we have we have 2 hours a day for 3 days a week of our building inspector being in the office. And they do site inspections outside of that time, but it's a big,
10 o'clock at night to check lights is not part of the.
no.
The big issues are the lights across the lake, and there's three or four specific incidences or homes that cause a problem. And lights shining into people's houses, you know. We
Yeah.
took out the string lights, they're allowed, right?
Yeah, and again, we tried to take subjective issues out, like it's too bright for me to define glare. You literally have to see the fixture in your window. You know, if you're saying the light's coming into my window, that means you're seeing the bulb, not the fixture,
Right.
the actual bulb. Because if it's behind a fixture, then it's indirect and it's at least diffused somewhat.
The example on the lake is the party owns a pier, and there's posts on both sides of the pier. The right post has a green light, and the left post has a red light,
Port and starboard.
port and starboard. So when you're walking, it's not shining out to the lake, it's shining into the land. So when you're walking, and it's all decorative, when you're walking to the pier, you can see the red and green light. But the neighbor next to him, that's her bedroom. Her bedroom's on that side of the house, so the light, the red and green light shines directly into her bedroom. And,
Is it on all night?
yeah,
This isn't just a lake issue either. We get
not a lake
complaints
issue, it's just an
from
example.
Government Hill Road and all over the town.
This
we
is
need
making me-
something.
Yeah, it's making me think of that Trace Adkins video. If anyone hasn't seen it, you can go Google after. Every light in the house is on, and you go down in the video, it's like lit up, like every light in the house is on, and it's not good. So,
Like Christmas vacation.
yeah. Yeah, I have one comment that I just want to note that's just before I forget it. It's under applicability 2A, third bullet point. Additions of any size that increase the number of parking spaces by 25%. I think it should be or more,
Yeah.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
just so it's.
Well, the church is not gonna like this.
Well-
They were here last time, and I think.
They
it's-
didn't like it last time.
But he actually, I think because their foot candle, my recollection was their
Church.
foot candle wasn't, they were compliant with what we had talked about, because he was here with the last time we discussed it, and I think they had said that they thought they were compliant with whatever we were suggesting.
Yeah, although I
That's my
think
recollection from
we've,
last
Yeah.
we've now added things like turning the lights off at 9 or 10, I don't know.
Mhm.
We've
Okay.
also
Yeah.
said you can't, the bulb has to be shaky, you cannot see the bulb. The
Yeah, but I
fixture.
think that's always been
I think
true
it-
of our
yeah, I think
commercial.
at
Is that
the-
right?
But
Yeah.
at the church, I don't think you can. I
Right,
think it's,
they're all
they're
down.
up and down, and they have the columns, but I don't believe anyone can actually see anything.
We have to make a reasonable effort at this, but there's gonna be people upset on both sides. There are definitely people that have contacted me that want nothing but dark sky rules. They want, and those are very strict. And they're, in a metropolitan area like Delafield, when you have Waukesha County and Milwaukee, and you're just not gonna get dark sky
But
rules.
there's only like,
Go up to
there's not
Door
that
County.
many in the nation. I mean,
No.
as far as actual true dark skies, it's just, that's not us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've also had the people say that, like, in subdivisions, that most new subdivisions all have lamp post requirements in the HOA documents, and they would feel concerned walking their streets in their subdivision if those lights weren't there. And none of those are on timers. They're all on a, sensor, so they go off at dawn, but they're not going off at 10 PM.
But, and they're all indirect typically, like,
Yeah, they'll,
or,
yeah,
Yeah, but-
but they might have a
or
bulb,
what?
but they're 10, 20, 30 feet back. They're middle of the yard, usually.
yeah,
Does the ordinance say they must, going forward, they must be on timers?
That's one
Yes.
of the issues, yeah.
Going
That
forward.
would be
Yeah.
for
Going
new
forward.
builds, though,
Yeah.
I think is how we landed on that.
Yeah.
You can't go back and go into your subdivision.
Well, right, but I think that's the, that's the question, like, is this going forward, or are we gonna try to go back? And if we try to go back, we're not gonna resolve a lot of those phone calls that you're getting today, because we're not gonna be able to go back and enforce the people that are calling you complaining about some, those properties.
Putting a
that are-
light on a pier, is that,
Well, I
is that
think
even a
some
violation of
things
this?
Well, and is that even under our jurisdiction, is that a county or DNR issue,
Oh, that's great. I'd love to use that excuse.
Just give him Dale's number. Have him call Dale.
Yeah. I'll give 'em
No, I
both.
think if it's our code in the shoreline district, if we created that code, then we can enforce our code.
But
it's
we
not-
could
it's not-
exempt all of shoreland zoning from this code, and then Ron wouldn't have any authority over the lake people.
I'll vote for that. You're not gonna change big subdivisions and make them put on timers, but there's certain spot issues that we need to give residents the impression that there's some recourse, okay? At least take the ordinance and go next door and show the person that is violating it, that they're violating the ordinance.
Private right of enforcement. That'd be a novel approach for a town.
That would be scary.
That's what it is in Milwaukee all the time.
We're not Milwaukee.
I know.
Not in everything.
All right.
What do we
It's a
wanna do?
good attempt.
We gotta deal with it. Do we wanna table it for tonight and give it some more thought? I mean, or do we wanna give, we didn't really do a deep dive, so I don't think we wanna give Tim any direction to make changes. We haven't really done anything.
Or we could approve everything except the residential, and then keep working on the residential, and modify the residential.
Can I offer some help?
You wanna take it on? Sure.
I think it's worth looking into other municipalities.
We've done that.
Oh, we've done everything.
Yeah.
haven't found anything?
This is based on like 5 or 6 different
Yeah.
municipalities
But
from,
this was probably more comprehensive than many municipalities. Some are one page or less, and they're very minimal.
The best
I
thing we
mean,
could do
and
is have
mostly,
Shaniqua
and it's mostly
annex.
about permits. It's mostly about what the process is, you know, you gotta submit these items to get approvals. But it doesn't have any
Criteria for approval.
criteria for
Approval.
evaluating that, so you rely on the lighting designer.
Yeah.
I don't know what these communities do. Some, you know, some have issues, and I think they have the same struggles that we do, is how do you enforce some of this stuff?
If you don't have strict guidelines, the courts are very opposed. That's the conditional use issue. You have to have no interpretation, you just check the box, go down and check each of the guidelines. That's what got us in trouble with conditional use.
Yep.
So relative to the concerns about like how do we monitor or how do we enforce the current homes that are there, right? So we've got new homes, right, there's kind of under wraps, but for those that are pre-existing, is there anything that would trip a trigger as far as that our building inspector would need to get involved with? That sets a new meter then for those
Well,
existing?
yeah, I mean, you
Anytime
could
they
use,
pull a building permit.
Tear down on renovations, like substantial renovations, I mean, that could be.
Well, has the
another one.
French property pulled a,
True.
they put a CO,
for which one?
the French property on the lake? Because we get tons, or I get tons of complaints on the French property. But have they pulled a certificate of occupancy for the French property on Pewaukee Lake?
I don't know. I'd have to check the records. I don't think so. I don't
If
think
they
they're
haven't, then they
completed.
would fall underneath this, and that's one of the big issues on the lake. Tomich property is also a big issue on the lake, but that's
already
already occupied, so.
Because I know that, you know, if there's that kind of metering as far as what's the tooth in this, right? That's always been something that we've struggled on, but if it is at that point that they're pulling a new permit, otherwise, you know, I don't know really how else you're going to.
Well, but then do we use the 25% or 50% rules like they do for boathouses and things like that? I mean,
We could do it like the county does, where any change would require, when they have to do conditional or certified survey maps, when there's a lot adjustment.
CSM, if they're doing, well, and if it's a tear down and a rebuild, that's easy.
Well, even if they do a modification in their house, they require a CSM. For any zoning permit to construct a kitchen, they
Okay,
require
so
it.
basically, anytime you pull a permit for any construction, we'd make you get in
We'd review
compliance
the-
with the lighting code.
Yep.
So you don't think it's requesting a certificate of occupancy?
I think both. I think you could that's your fail-safe is to check at occupancy that they meet the lighting standards.
But,
But the goal is to check the lighting at the submission of the house plans that come to the building inspector. That's your first set. But for those that are in limbo right now,
Well, and you could do a home renovation and never need a certificate of occupancy because you never moved out, right? You're
Yeah, but
renovating your
still-
kitchen.
You still need building permits, so.
Yeah. So the pulling of a building permit or a certificate of occupancy would trigger the law's applicability to an individual house. New,
Would they notify, would they notify neighbors then? You know, so in other words, let's say
No.
neighbor
no,
A or B. I
no,
mean,
it's not gonna be subjective, like what does your neighbor want or like or dislike.
We don't
It-
notify neighbors now when you pull
It would be
building.
basically, you'd be subject to this hopefully objective standard that
Okay.
all outside lighting gets turned off at 10 PM, your lamp post has a 60-watt bulb in it, you have no floodlights aimed at a neighbor's property that causes glare. And, there's a maximum foot candles outside the house, which I think my house exceeds tenfold, so, I'm never gonna pull a permit on my house.
and even that, like pulling a building permit or occupancy, even that's going to put a huge strain on the building inspector, the one building inspector we have in the town. So just keep that in mind. He's going
Well,
to
and
struggle
and it's
to.
also-
We get a lot of permits.
Let's be honest, that's pretty, how long would it take us to get the lake fixed? 150 years, I mean,
Yeah.
versus we can apply it to a new subdivision as they're built. But
And-
that's not where the complaints likely are.
And I think some of this, right, while it may be hit and miss with regards to what we can do with existing residential neighborhoods, there's still a sizable amount of land sitting south that potentially could be developed.
Well, just the property where you live, the 7 or 8 homes that are going in there.
Yep, that is gonna
I mean, you want that-
substantially impact what we see.
Oh,
then
absolutely, you're way
if-
out in the country.
Those farms develop over towards Highway 18, and you can pick any one of those farms that are over there. that's gonna be casting, you think the complaints are bad for the lake right now. Once you start getting into those areas of impacting, some of those neighborhoods back there, there will be calls again. So I would urge all of us at some point, not just to dismiss this to say we can never enforce it, but to say there is still developable land within the town that
I'd
this
almost,
could improve.
I think new residential development is almost into the commercial category. We set the rules in advance and they just, the builder,
They do
the
it.
developer has to do it.
They just do it.
And, you know, if the cost of the house has to go up because you have to put timers on your outside posts as well as your outside lights. I mean, today's house around here is gonna be $1 million plus or minus anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. So we can do that. And then there's no enforcement other than as part of the approval of the
Building plans.
building plan and the HOA document, or the homeowner's documents.
No, but I think you're correct, though. I mean, this is,
But it's applying it
Continuation.
retroactively or applying it to a renovation that I think is gonna be more difficult.
Relative to the inspector's, right, load, as it were.
Well, the new construction's fine. I mean, they
But
can
for
include that.
existing, so
'Cause you
like
could do
somebody
that
gets
from
a
a
new
plan.
water heater, right, does he go in to do it? I guess part of that too is have the neighbors complained, right? So it's trying to work out that balance of where are the hot spots with regards to egregious, violators of any type of lighting, right? If you have individuals that are actually able to see from their house somebody else's light in their house, or it's, you know, reflecting in, I'm sure we already have a small roll of, you know, houses that are known to have issues with their existing lighting, you know, even just from the conversation here. So if he has to prioritize, talk to Ron about who's on the list, and as they pull permits for whatever.
That's a little discriminatory. I'm not giving Ron
But
that
there's
much power.
There's a prioritization there, right? And I'm
Well, that was the
assuming,
enforcement was supposedly a neighbor complaint, but then we wanted a neighbor to be someone that was actually next door and impacted,
Yeah.
as opposed to someone who lived a quarter of a mile away but thought the house glowed.
oh, certainly, yeah. So, you know, I'm assuming at some point with any of these calls that come in, we are logging the complaints formally, or no?
I have 3 addresses. I know exactly where they live. So, yeah.
Yeah, so if there's already a process in place of where we're documenting complaints in from neighbors, right? And if we're expanding it to say neighbor X called in, but they're calling in on a neighbor who's quarter mile away or more, right? That may not necessarily hit like a priority of sorts, but if you have a neighbor who's directly next door to each other complaining about that light, maybe that becomes a higher priority and something that gets pulled over into some type of priority for the inspector, at least to say, if they're pulling a permit, you also need to take a look at this, right? So kind of a high, medium, and low.
Yeah, I mean, we could
category.
put them on a list, and when they come in for a permit for some reason, then we'll flag it because we know where they are. But, I mean, we also have properties I know aren't going to pull a permit for a long, long time. So,
But you still even have to pull a permit for like a water heater, and I'm gonna use that example because I fall into the agricultural category, right? But I still had to pull a permit for the water heater. If my name was on a list, and let's assume I wasn't agricultural, you know, they could at that particular time, when he comes to investigate or check it out, also do the review, right?
sure. He could also say, well, my neighbor also shines their light and it hits my house. I'm just thinking of,
Well,
what the
it-
responses are going to be, and it will happen. I guarantee it. And it'll start a trickle effect of neighbors,
Yeah,
which,
but I
I mean,
think
that's the discussion, though. I think really is, do we either you grandfather it in or you don't? I mean, we'll have to figure out enforcement either way, but I think that's the biggest discussion. I don't think there's any in
On new
between.
construction's a lot easier than enforcement on existing properties or renovated properties.
Yeah.
And if it comes down to
And-
an issue of the agreeing ones, right, like we've already put together lists of how do we assess conditional use, right? We had it in a packet today.
Yeah.
So, you know, potentially for those, when do we pull it, right? Is it a kitchen remodel? Is it a water heater? Is it insert whatever reason you gotta get a permit for?
Yeah.
does it follow sort of, here's where that categorization of high, medium, low is, so that we aren't overwhelming the inspector?
Well, it seems like too, if there's not a problem, like if there's neighbors who have lights, they don't turn off at night, but maybe they like that they don't turn off, like maybe there's people that it doesn't bother anyone, those aren't the type of people we're trying to enforce.
I think, and we'd have to talk to Eric, but I do think having a list that says if any of these people pull a permit, send a building inspector out.
Well, I mean,
I just think.
I wouldn't make it
that's-
public record. I mean, I don't have it written down. I just know where they live. But,
It's like
but
the don't accept checks from these people, you know, that you see at grocery stores.
oh yeah,
sometimes.
right.
You know,
So-
actually, I think, Eric, as long as you had a procedure that was approved and you followed the procedure, that said every time you get a permit, check to see if there's ever been any complaints against this residence. And as long as you consistently followed the procedure and there was no discrimination in following the procedure, I'm not
Could
sure.
be, if you tie it to a formal complaint and then.
Yeah.
I still think you're going to run into issues, though. I mean,
Oh, I'm
just
not gonna touch it.
I mean, because then somebody complains about their neighbor, and then we say, you know, we only can do anything if they pull a permit,
Yeah.
and then they're going to complain about that.
The next thing we'll be doing is people's dogs walking in somebody else's yard and doing their business. We've gotten letters, or I have, anyhow. I get a lot of letters.
Lucky you.
Well, doesn't it become a civil issue then if they're taking that into their own hands?
What do we want to do? Table?
Open carry?
We can take it to Eric, get his comments and put it on next time? We can-
Well, I think it's a lot of good work, but I think, you know, we got to understand.
I think it would be good to get Eric's input on any retroactive application of the ordinance. Even in the commercial, I'm a little worried, but I'm less worried there than I am in the residential. And if we can do it retroactively, can we do it piecemeal, like tying it to permits pulled or COs pulled? Does that work? Because if there's no retroactive, if retroactive application is, you know, basically going to be a problem from a legal perspective, it makes it a lot easier for us. Then we
yeah.
just make it this rule applies to new subdivisions, thank you very much. So I think we have to have that.
That's fine, we can put it on
Yeah.
Eric's list. You're at those meetings.
Thanks.
I think you had a comment at one point? Okay.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, that's fine. All
I-
good. I was just following where you guys were going. I had a question, but I think you guys nailed it, so.
Okay.
So we'll table.
Table, motion. I'm gonna make a motion that we table this to the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Well, you made a motion tonight, Ron. Congratulations. No further discussion. Next,
Usurping Ed's job.
next meeting, September 6th, 2022. It's mandatory attendance for all of you.
Put my calendar right now.
The day after Labor Day, right?
Now, after we finish
There will be
this,
an open
we'll
bar.
start a landscaping ordinance, and we're gonna have similar issues with landscaping ordinance.
Do we think we're going to apply landscaping on residential?
What are we gonna do in the subdivisions?
Well,
Are we
subdivision, I
going
don't
after
care.
pink
That's easy.
flamingos?
Huh?
Are we going after pink flamingos?
Do you have a neighbor with pink flamingos?
I got flamingo ones, my house got flamingos. They put 50 pink flamingos in the front yard.
Would it be appropriate to make a motion to adjourn at this point?
It would be very appropriate.
Hey, when we get off topic.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I wanted to make a motion that we are never